November 9th, we're meeting with ECAT union negotiations. Crystal Dedera, HR County.
Wes Marino, County Admin.
Kristen Hill, Deputy County Attorney.
Rodriguez Kimbrough, Scandon County Area Transit.
Curtis Howard, Amalgamated Transit Union.
Mike Lowry, ATU.
Jim Stanton, ATU. Well, good morning.
Good morning. I have an ask. Yesterday when we TA'd, there were several articles that had the handbook, and we would like to make a reference to the handbook that was given to us yesterday, which was the revised handbook of I think it's 5/6/2021, as the handbook that we were referring to. So if we could either just leave it on the record, and all the future things that we do, just put that as the handbook that's being
Sure,
referred to.
absolutely.
We would appreciate it.
Okay.
Or if we could handwrite it in, him and I just initial it.
All right.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
And then, we're not sure how you want to start off the morning, but we're open. We have quite a few open items, which we believe can be closed out pretty quick on some of them. Some of them will take some time, we understand. I don't know if we want to go through what we think is open, or how do we want to do it?
I think we ended the day yesterday kind of verbally giving you our counter
Yes.
to some things. And I don't know if you want to speak to those, or if you want to, I guess I'll kind of leave it to you guys how y'all want to proceed.
I would say that I didn't write down what she was saying yesterday at the end.
So
We did have some conversation amongst at the end of the day yesterday. I can tell you that Article 3, we still would like to have. We want labor management meetings of some type. We just think that that is a way that stops the grievance process. The first line of it is, let's have some discussion before we start trying to take position on things. And having designated meetings, a lot of times you can do that because you don't always resolve something. Sometimes the manager has to receive information, go research it, get back, and then give you an answer at the next meeting. So we think it's very valuable. So we don't want to take that off the table.
Okay.
But we're not stuck on, you gotta have language that you gotta have them, but it's good to know that it's a way there. So mutually agreed to, however, but we think they're important. So,
Okay.
Article 4, we think is open, of course, is discipline.
But that's one of the ones we discussed
Yeah.
yesterday. So it's one thing we look at.
Yeah, let's just go through the ones you gave us a rebuttal on yesterday, that makes sense. You said, did we sign Article 4?
No.
Okay.
No, it's
We just asked for that one sentence on Article 4.
And we're waiting to resolve Article 5 before we.
Right. Article 5 is open with us.
that's the grievance arbitration.
Yeah, we have some things, we'll have to give you a calendar this morning on it. If you want to walk through it, we can walk through it.
Sure.
If you want to, Mike. So
Yeah.
they can know your concerns, we can walk through Article 5. And the quicker we can resolve it, the easier it is to knock out 2 articles.
Give me a moment here, we're gonna kind of skim through it again. I'm trying to see if we've kind of brought it a little bit, shortened it down from what you originally had, but it's a long article. So, this is the one I went over with Mark. This part is way too long. Okay. So some of the concerns we have is the oral step Okay, so I wanna make sure we're on the same page. The oral discussion is, and that is not mandatory, correct?
Right.
It's not, it's optional, okay, okay. So a couple of other steps that or things that we're a little bit concerned on is the length, the grievance process seems to be something that could drag on for quite a long period of time. It's not, it could, looks like it could go well past 30 days. So if someone's got a grievance on something, it could drag out, and we're a little concerned about the length, if we could shorten it up. We think, similar to what we have now.
These timelines are consistent with what's in the operational services agreement.
Yeah,
And all
well,
of the other.
I don't like that one either, but it's just such a long process, and it does, go ahead.
And just to be honest with you, Mark advised us that we don't need to have a lengthy process with the county on our stuff, so,
Well,
well, you understand that you wanna try to bring it more in line?
So what
But
do you have in mind?
no.
It's something similar to.
What's the done deal? She just said no.
No, she said, she said no, what do you?
Oh.
What do you have in mind?
Right.
Well, we'd like to reduce it down to 5 days, or 7 days at least, 7, which would be, because, wait, is this by calendar, or is this by?
You talking about step 2?
Yeah, I'm trying to look, let me see, is this?
Days is defined as calendar days.
Calendar days, so 7 would be fine. 7.
Where?
Where are we?
So when you go to step 1, which is your initials after the orals, 7 days, we would like to see it at 7. And then the response,
Sorry, 7 days where?
okay, step 1, letter 2A, step 1.
2A.
So you want 7 days to submit a grievance of
Correct.
2A?
Yeah,
Step
we
2.
actually want.
Or number 2A?
I know you think it's kind of strange to hear us say that, but instead of 10 days, we want 7 days. We want to make the grievance process a little faster.
So no grievance will be valid unless submitted in writing within 7 days.
Right, and then you go down to B, and it says the mass transit director or designee will provide a decision in writing to the employee and his representative. And within 15 days, we think that should be reduced down to 7 days as well.
Under 2B?
Under 2B as well.
So we can we try 10? Yeah, because again, a lot of times, what I'm noticing, okay, and I'm just being honest, if I'm getting grievance after grievance after grievance, what that does is now that actually pulls me away from doing the other things like 5339. Like it's pulling me, and I know I just wanted I wanted to be fair, and I wanted to be firm, and I wanted it to be a smooth process. But if we can have 10 days to try to be able to get a response back.
I can agree to 10 days as long as we take out C, because I don't like that where there's no response at all. That leaves us sitting here wondering if you're gonna respond, and then if you don't respond at all, we gotta move the grievance on.
Well,
I think it's important that we get responses to grievances, so we understand your
The
position.
whole thing
That
is to
just-
try to resolve a grievance,
Of course.
not because one side didn't do something technically or whatever, and leave it on one side or the other. You know what I mean? That's not the goal. The goal is to try to resolve issues, not have the union, if we don't do something, it's that the manager was supposed to do, we forfeit, or gotta do something. It's about communication and working together. That's what a grievance process is supposed to be. I understand at the end of the day, you might not still agree, that's okay too, but the whole goal is to try to resolve issues.
So are you suggesting that if there isn't a timely response from management within 10 days, that then you win?
Do you have that in your contract? I don't know. We're
No.
talking-
No, and this only would
I think-
give the opportunity, in the event that a response wasn't provided, which I don't think has ever happened, that you would then automatically have the right to go to the next step. So that means you don't forfeit anything just because management may not have been able to get a timely response out. You just automatically get to progress.
Okay, so we,
But as, again,
I hope
I've
that-
never seen a response not being given at any step.
Okay, so we'll change that to 10,
Okay.
okay? Let me read on for a second. And we have 5 days to appeal it of the 10-day time limit. Okay, and then step 2, up to the 5 days. Appreciate changing that to will. That's a good thing.
I don't think that that meeting's ever been denied.
No, it hasn't, but it, you know, like in the other contract, I think it says may, it doesn't say will.
It does, but again, I don't think
Yeah.
that meeting's ever been denied.
So then the county administrator, I'm comfortable with leaving you a little bit more time and leaving it 15. I understand that. Because, you know, obviously you're dealing with a lot of departments, so I'm not gonna dispute that part, okay? But I'm hoping it's gonna be resolved at the first level.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's the goal. And then it has moved on to arbitration. Oh, Merit System Protection Board. Not a fan. Not a fan of our bargaining unit utilizing Merit System Protection.
Well, it's the employee's option.
If it's
Our
negotiated.
if it's
not-
negotiated.
It's not mandated that we have to have a grievance procedure that.
Well, you don't have to represent the employee, but it's the employee's option if they elect to pursue the Merit System Protection Board process.
That's not
You
what
know-
Mark says.
We'll call Mark, he's available for us.
So is it your?
It's my understanding that we don't have to agree to that, and remember,
You don't have to agree to represent.
So is it your posture that you don't want your bargaining unit employees to be able to utilize the MSPB?
Correct. Yes.
you want them to
Why,
use the
why,
grievance
why
process.
is that?
Wait.
Why would you take that decision?
So let
That-
me
that
add,
freedom
so
away
let,
from the
let's
employee?
let's get some clarification about the Merit System Protection Board, all right? So,
I can flat out tell you, they don't know transit. So if it's not it's not.
Well, what is they, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm okay with
I
that.
didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say that, you know, some employments are the same when you work for the county. And I deal with the county in Tampa, the city workers in Tampa, not the county, they call city workers. Same as that process, and they have a right to go either way. But it's different because the board understands and they set policy, and they understand those policies. They don't in no way intervene on transit issues because they don't know and understand the dynamics of transit. Now, if it's a simple discharge for attendance or something, sure they would get it. But if it's something involving something a little bit more complex, that involves the day-to-day transit stuff, they wouldn't understand what it would be. So we're not bargaining for 1771, which we probably don't have a problem with. But in the transit world, we would have a problem. And Mark says that my understanding from talking with him, or we'll call him, is that that's not something that's legally bound that we have to do by the state law or PERC.
Unless you negotiate in.
Right, unless you know, and that's what I was saying, unless we negotiate. So our position is we didn't want to negotiate something in there, and we don't have, I don't know what Mike's do, but we don't know the board, we don't know how that makeup is, we have no say-so in that, so.
It's appointed by
We
commissioners,
know the
right?
county, we know you and your staff, we know everybody in his staff. It's totally different from us.
I would say, you know, Mike, I think they are appointed by the commissioners, I don't know that for sure, honestly.
They are.
I
I don't
don't,
think all of them are.
I don't believe that.
How many are on that board,
I
Crystal?
believe 5.
5, yeah.
So there's,
Yeah, Keith Wells.
Keith Wells is selected by the committee. I believe there's 5 or 6. They just went through a reappointment.
Yeah. I guess my thing would be that, as an employee, I would think, I would want that ability to make my own decision as to which direction I would want to go. You know, whether that board knows transit or public works or with no solid waste. I don't know about all that, but I know as an employee, I would want to be able to make my own decisions as to who represents me in that scenario. I don't understand, I guess I don't get why we would not want the employee to be able to make that decision.
So what I will say is, in the most respectful way I can, when they elect, when employees elect to have a union, it's the exclusive right of the union, and which is the membership. Right, comes out of the membership. They elect who they want. That is the choice. The bargaining unit, that just like any other employees across this country, if you're not in the union, then there's a set of policies and procedures you follow, right? And that's by the company, and the company sets what's going on. Here, we get to bargain a little bit of it and have a little bit more flexibility, and that's the avenue that they should be under. They're under a bargaining unit. That if they wasn't in the bargaining unit, they can go and do whatever. But this is a transparent process, and at the end of the day, the members vote to ratify a contract. No matter what we do with you here today, it's ultimately up to them. So to give them a right is just like I was saying about pension yesterday. You're not the expert on something. The experts are the ones that are elected and trained, the attorneys we use, and so on and so on. So, we would rather them stay in our structure than to be flip-flopping back and forth on decisions that will ultimately affect our labor agreement. And, the outcome of that board does have, within the county, it would have some weight to it about decision-making, which we would have no control over. And we would like to have control over that, right? That's our job to make sure that we protect, to the best of our ability, the bargaining unit. Not saying that we don't want that member to get their day. We do. We want them to be able to fully express themselves, but through this process, not through two different processes.
Yeah, I did have a question, and it's just, again, I don't want to be, again, I've heard everything, but what happens is just me wanting to know, what happens for the employees that are bargaining unit employees that are not currently represented, they're non-union dues paying members, what scenario, because I have to make sure.
So the law says that you have a right not to be in the bargaining
Yes, sir.
unit and pay dues.
Yes, sir.
However, you still fall under the collective bargaining of the bargaining unit still falls under this collective bargaining. So there's no, just because you choose not to pay dues, you have a different process. That's not the law.
Yes or no, and I understand, and I'm just, again, because my
I
vote
think
is
447 addresses that.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Yeah,
It says the process they can utilize through the grievance arbitration process.
Well,
Okay.
the employee gets to elect whether they want to be represented by the union through the grievance process, and the union has the option to represent an employee or not. So if an employee were not represented and going through the grievance process, then shouldn't they have the opportunity to elect the MSPB process?
And that's my observation, and this is my experience. I've been out at the road department when employees who didn't pay dues run into a situation, and the union goes, "No, we're not representing you. We're not going."
So,
So
but
what
that
does
was
that
obviously
employee
the
do?
previous administration of that union, but. go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, no, I think this is
Yeah.
still under, I mean, I've had employees that they don't pay dues, and the union says, whether it be whoever was the steward at the time or what have you, says, "No, we're not representing you."
So, let me,
I don't know if I understand that.
yeah, I'm not, so, but
I mean,
my
it's happened.
understanding.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I don't know what part of the process we didn't represent them, because we take.
Any of the process.
I
So-
don't want to say it on the record, but I want to.
So an employee, let's get it straight. An employee can say, I don't want the union to represent me, right? But if that issue that's going in front of management through the grievance process, the union should have the right to be able to sit in, not to represent the individual, to represent the labor agreement to ensure that there's not any deals being cut
Well, we're not.
that are gonna be in violation of the labor
That's-
agreement.
that's
But my,
perfectly fine.
but my concern about the MSPB is that binding? Is that decision binding? And if it's binding, what if the board makes a decision that then now affects our labor agreement? Because they made, the MSPB board made a decision based on the individual that went in front of them. Now is the union held, or are we gonna end up having to file agreements on the decision of the MSPB?
I don't know.
That's not how the
Can't
process
speak to that. I
works.
don't believe that, I don't, yeah, as Kristen said, I don't believe that's how it works. But I'm just telling you my own personal experience. I've had employees that face a disciplinary action, and the union representative goes, we're not helping you, we're not representing you.
Yeah, Bobby
at
made
all."
mistakes by saying that, by the way. Just so
It
you
may
know.
not just be Bobby, I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
I'm just saying that was probably not a
that has
smart
been
way to
said,
approach
and that
it.
has been practiced.
Yeah, so,
And
that's
I
why.
mean, it is. what it
Under
is.
my leadership, I've sat in rooms. with
And I
them.
don't have a problem with you sitting in any.
Right.
Yeah, so legally, through a grievance process, whether a member wants to be represented or not, through a grievance process, they still have a right to that process, right? Still have a right to, be heard through the grievance process. And the union should only be making a decision after it's been through the steps, and it's been denied all the way through the steps, to process it to arbitration, is when the union body membership should only be the time that we tell an employee that we don't want to represent them. Right now, they make the choice initially. If they don't want to be represented, then we don't represent them. That's the law. But we shouldn't be telling employees that we don't want to represent them unless we agree with management that there was a clear violation and there was nothing here that's going to change, because the facts are that you just made a violation. We don't want to spend money and go through the steps of meeting with people if everybody's clear. You did this, the camera shows you doing it, then I can see a shop steward saying, hey, look, there's no way you did it, you're guilty, you know. But outside of that, we should always have the integrity to allow people to process, and we should represent them through the process.
So Curtis, let me tell you what Mark said
That's-
to me. Mark says to me, under statute 447, under the grievance process that we have, the grievance arbitration spot process, a person that's not a member of the union, it's in the statute for them to have a process to utilize our grievance arbitration, to go to arbitration.
Right, that's what I'm
They
saying.
have that, they have the ability to utilize that.
That's correct.
They have to post
They
a
have-
bond and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
but
Well,
And that's all
I
laid
can
out.
be honest.
It's
I'll
laid
just-
out
I'll
in
just be
there.
honest with you. I don't know that I want to. I would rather the employee have the decision.
Right, they do have the decision.
Have the freedom to choose which route they go. And some of that's personal experience. I mean, you know, back in the day, there was a union that came in when I was an RCO working on the road. There was a union that came into the corrections, IBCO. I didn't vote for the union. I didn't feel like I needed any representation. I could speak for myself. And I certainly would not want, personally, I would not want anybody else making my decisions for me. I can make my decisions as to which route I want to go.
but you made the decision when you took the job that you fell under
No,
collective
it
bargaining
came,
agreement.
no, it came in after I took the job.
Huh?
He was implying that they.
It came in
Oh,
after.
it came after, okay, wow.
It came afterward. I didn't vote for it.
Right.
Right, and what
Well,
I,
the union's been established here, so most people either voted for the union or they took the job knowing there was a collective bargaining agreement when they took the job.
Right.
and I would say that
At least I hope
because
you told
we
me
are
that.
negotiating, we don't want that process, doesn't stop Wes, that an individual has a right to go through the process and make their own decisions. The law says that they still have a right to go through the grievance process and arbitration.
Mhm.
So that's not changing in our suggestion here by having one process versus two. It's just that it's one process that works for everybody instead of having two different processes you have to manage and pay attention to and all of that. That's the only thing different from what you're saying that we're saying. We want one process instead of two. We're not, whether you pay dues or not, we don't care. You have, in my opinion, everybody should have a right, period. And that right is you make the decision, and you're absolutely right. If you want to speak for yourself, that's fine. If you want assistance, that's fine. And you may get to a point in that, because I started this way, but I realized through the process I wanted. That's your decision. We just want one process.
I understand.
So we don't want to take away nobody's rights at all. The whole goal is to give them rights.
And I just want to add, and I don't want a board that will affect my collective bargaining agreement by making a decision, an
Yeah.
outcome that can affect my collective bargaining agreement.
Absolutely.
For the rest of the employees that have the union, that they unilaterally make a decision, and now I'm bound by it because we agreed to this process, and that board that was appointed by commissioners, it doesn't have any representation from the workforce on that board. It's concerning to me that there's not a maybe if, I have a different feeling if there was an appointed person on the MSPB.
Well, the sheriff also appoints members too.
The
So
sheriff,
it's
not the
just-
PBA, the sheriff did.
Right, and understand,
I just want it to be
We-
known that the commissioners don't pick all of them.
Right.
in Tampa, where I work, and I fully understand, it works for the city workers, right? They have a grievance process, and they have, the actual city council is the board, and they make it, you make a determination, they make a determination right then and there. But it works for that environment. Doesn't work for the city of Tampa transit folks, and they don't even attempt it, right? And the city council says it all the time. And the mayor sits on the board of the transit workers, and she frequently says, I have to get updates. I hear you, Curtis, I hear you, the president there, I'm not knowledgeable of that day to day. I am very knowledgeable of the city processes, right? So there's a distinguish there too that is very important. And so I understand your position, and that's why I said 1771, yeah, them having a right to both procedures makes sense, at least in my eyes right now. But for transit workers and our labor agreements, we usually don't have those. And we have a lot of them that have city and county, right here in Florida as well. And they usually don't have both processes, they usually just have a grievance process.
I understand.
So we don't want to, belittle your point.
Right, no, I understand, I appreciate you doing that.
Okay, Mike, but what's next?
Well, then I get into the arbitration process, and this is where I had a lot of discussion let me just look to see something here. Let's see if it's been shortened down from what it was before.
So I don't like B in arbitration. The one who submits, the union is always the one who submits to arbitration 95%, if not 100% of the time. So we shouldn't be striking first. It should be a fair process of taking turns to strike to see who the outcome of an arbitrator is. That's not a fair process.
What are you suggesting?
That we do what we can do now, whether to rotate, just, you go first this time, I go first next time, just rotate back and forth. It's not, just a fair process.
That's fine with it. Before we were flipping a coin.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the best one.
I think the rotating is
It
working.
depends. Look, if the county had a double-sided coin, it would really be.
Hey, we gotta do what we gotta do, man.
But the rotating has been working because now that I see how Ms. Huell's doing it, we're keeping track through emails of who did it last. So
Sure.
now I understand.
We're good with that.
Oh, hearings will be held in Pensacola, we think it should say Escambia County. Like, when you say Pensacola, you referring to the city of Pensacola? Or could it be held at another location outside of the county, I mean, outside of the
We
city?
always mutually agree to location.
Yeah, can we just say Escambia County?
Yeah, we can say that.
That's fine.
Sure. Which step is that? I'm
C,
sorry.
isn't it?
C.
First sentence.
Correct, yep. Well, it's actually the second sentence.
Second sentence, the hearings will be held in, it's the second sentence, yeah.
Mine's good.
You can't hear me through my computer, so I'm trying to pull up on the computer.
30 days from the date. So, okay, under D1, the arbitrator shall issue his or her decision not later than 30 days from the date of the close of the hearing or the submission of briefs, whichever is later. So I just want to make sure FMCS does say, what, I think the maximum is 60 days, is that correct?
Yeah, but the practice is 30 days.
Right, I just want
And they generally,
I prefer it to be 30, but I just
they
want to.
generally are bound by the contract, not by FMCS.
Okay, so if it says 30, then they're bound by, okay.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm good with that. This front and back has got me all confused here. How is it?
Turn it, flip it upside down. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So 4, it seems like it just says policy or law forming the basis of the grievance. We got more than just a policy in the county. We have the collective bargaining agreement, we have the, well, the handbook is the policy, I guess. So I think we need to add the CBA to it, the specific provision provided in the CBA. That's not a policy.
So I said it one more time.
On bullet number 4, where it says the arbitrator shall limit his or her decision strictly to the application and interpretation of the specific provisions of, we only have the policy or law, we should have the CBA.
How about, would you agree to specific provisions of the collective bargaining agreement forming the basis for the grievance? That regurgitates what's in the statute.
You okay with that, man?
Yeah, that's fine.
Say that verbiage though, the collective bargaining, what?
Agreement?
Yeah, that's what I was asking, CBA, that's the same thing, we said the same thing, you just word spelled it out. Anything in the collective bargaining agreement is what he should be basing his decision off, the policy of the county and any other law that is out there.
No, I said of the collective bargaining agreement.
Right. Of the collective bargaining agreement, policy, and law, right?
I said of the collective bargaining agreement.
What do we say?
Well, that's what can form the basis for a grievance, is a provision of the collective bargaining agreement, right?
Yeah, but if you use your handbook to determine your decision of termination or discipline, then he or she has to make a decision from whatever the acting manager at the time made that decision off of. And it's a combination, in my opinion, of the collective bargaining and whatever provision, policy or wherever the manager made the decision. So if he or she made a decision, and let's just say, for an example, the union's arguing that the rule book is not fair and reasonable, the arbitrator has a right to make a decision, or if he or she thought the policy in here was fair and reasonable. That has nothing to do with the collective bargaining agreement, but the collective bargaining agreement allows you to file a grievance and do things, and those are things that you state for the record when you have an arbitration. That we're here today because of the collective bargaining, article such and such allows you to file a grievance, we did so timely, da-da-da. And then in certain parts of the collective bargaining agreement, it may talk about the discipline. So I think it should say all three, in my opinion.
Well, we'll discuss it.
Okay.
Okay. Continue on. You follow on. Down in this area, in G and 7,
You okay with that? Or-
in D and 7. Behind it.
Well, ultimately, let's walk through what we can. We agree to some certain stuff like that.
Because it's one has to be they can call it this.
I still want to walk through what we can. Yeah, we've been talking about that. Just tell them what they want first.
So under 6B, we're still looking at 5, we're discussing that. It's 6B, punitive damages. I think that it works both ways for management and for a union. Sometimes a grievance is taken to arbitration that should never have been taken, and the process is, ends up being costly or whatever, and sometimes,
We just don't want to agree to be.
I'm sorry?
We don't want to agree to be. We want the arbitrator to make that decision.
Yes.
And right now, that is only what some arbitrators do. That is not something that is mandatory. So we feel like if somebody's wrongfully terminated and they go through the process and they have arbitration and it drags out for a year, there's no expectation that they would be sitting out there home. They have to be providers. And, you know, they missed a lot. They may be working at Burger King, right, which is totally a major difference from what would the county would have provided for them. We don't want somebody, and we don't, I'm just gonna be honest with you, we don't want the county to feel like they can make decisions and determine and alter people's lives wrongfully with no true consideration, and the only thing they can do is pay them the difference of. No, that's not fair. We're
It's
talking
not fair
about
that they should just be made whole for their wages.
what make whole
and
is to you and what make whole is to
benefits
me
is-
is two different things, right? And in this country, there's two things that you can't be made whole on workers' comp. You can't sue the company. You can't sue them, so you just go through a workers' comp process, right?
We're not talking about that
I'm
process.
just, if you let me finish and understand where I'm going. So when it comes down to having an arbitration case and an arbitrator, just like the courts, you know, they have the right to do certain things. We feel like the arbitrator should have the right to see if he believes or she believes that this case was done in some type of malice, then that employee should be made whole, and that made whole should mean that you should pay them their normal salary and all the benefits that go with it. That's their decision and determination. The union may be arguing that, but if it's no malice, I don't see arbitrators doing that. They do what's described here. So while those are awards that come out most of the time, we are still seeing awards that come out where employers are doing things with a little bit of malice and turned around and have to pay the full price of overtime and everything else. Because when you put this language in there, you take away from the ability that somebody had to work overtime and all the other things. So we don't want this in there.
Or the cost of.
Yeah, Curtis, I understand that y'all want to
Cost
agree to
of
that.
legal fees.
I would tell you that's probably gonna be a point of contention. It's just gonna be what it's gonna be.
Right, that's fine, but at least you understand why we don't want it.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not, for us, it's about what we fight for principle wise.
I understand.
It has nothing to do with.
Yeah, I
I
understand.
mean, you could, you know, the county could, not saying you will, I'm just saying, the county could force terminations on people because you have an unlimited amount of money sitting out there to spend versus legal fees. Actually, historically, the ATU took a case in front of, filed a case, and you guys got punitive damages paid to you, right? Against us.
That was not through the grievance procedure.
I know it wasn't the grievance, but
That's a
the
whole
point that I'm
different
making, I know it was an unfair labor practice. But I'm trying to say that the same thing could happen in the grievance arbitration process, where you push a case all the way through that you should have never done. And it was, like he said, he used the word malice.
And those were not punitive damages. I think that you had an attorney's fee award entered against the union. That's not punitive damages.
I'm just making a point. You know, I'm making the point that it's similar in the nature that once, it could happen to either side. If we pushed a grievance that an arbitrator looked at and came back and said, look, they should have never pushed this case that far.
Sure.
And they're doing it because of malice.
I understand what you're saying.
And this
There's a lot
language
of cost involved with the
Yeah.
process.
But that's,
This is not language that is in a sense protecting or not protecting the county, right?
so you're suggesting that then the arbitrator would potentially have the discretion to award punitive damages against the union? Because
But
this
it-
provision only addresses the award to the grievant.
Hold on, Mr. Madmore had something. Mike,
You gotta turn.
one
We
second,
can't hear
one
you.
second. All right, go ahead.
All right, thanks. So I've been doing this for 41 years, and I don't have a single contract in 41 years that allows for punitive damages. There is.
We're not asking
in
for
law,
punitive damage.
court actions and PERC actions, not actually PERC doesn't have punitive damages either. Not even PERC can award punitive damages in an unfair labor practice case. There's no labor case, no National Labor Relations Board authority to have punitive damages. It doesn't exist in labor. It's just not something that's there. Now, if somebody wants to bring an action in a court of law because they think some tort was committed or they think some discrimination action was committed, there is damages that are set out in the law that they can recover. In some instances, it could include punitive damages, but they're very circumspect. They're a very long body of case law and statutory law that control it. We can't just put in a contract that some person can show up and get punitive damages. This is I've never heard of that in any labor relations negotiations in my entire life.
So,
So,
oh, my bad.
I don't think, since it's not permitted in the statute or by PERC, I don't think you can even put it in a contract.
So can I ask you?
In the public sector. I don't think you can obligate any public employer in Florida to be subject to punitive damages for a contract violation.
Well, Wes,
Not permitted.
what I would suggest, so we can keep moving through some other articles, maybe we let our attorney, Mark, is available today.
Let him get
Maybe the attorneys can work out the grievance process.
Well, I will say this, Kurt, and you, of course, you're welcome to contact the attorney, but I'm not gonna be in agreement to take that out of the contract.
No, I didn't suggest that. I'm just
So,
suggesting
I
that.
mean, yeah, that's just kinda where I'm at.
Well, maybe they could work through the rest of it and get us to a point, and then if it goes to impasse and that's the argument in that particular section, then that's argued in front of the, the impasse.
I understand.
I don't have a problem with that, but it seems like it would be easier because, I'm not gonna sit here, I'm not an attorney, I'm not gonna sit here and keep challenging,
Right.
your attorney and your attorney staff when I'm not knowledgeable of it.
Sure,
So if they talk with Mark about some things, he knows the statute.
Absolutely.
He understands. I think they've worked well on many other issues that,
That's perfectly acceptable, but at the end of the day, I'm just telling you, I'm not gonna agree to take
Oh,
that.
I know.
Just being upfront about it.
So
no,
are
and
you-
I thank you.
Are you directing us to contact your attorney
Mark,
regarding
yes,
this?
he's available today.
We'll talk to him first.
Yeah, we'll ask him to, we'll talk to him in the caucus and let him know what we suggested first before you contact him. Yeah, we suggest that y'all work it out for us in the best interest of both parties. And then this way we can work on some other things, because I'm not an attorney, though.
Not even, and then you just leave it at Holiday Inn.
Yeah,
All
yeah, on 5 and 6, yes.
We did have some written revised counters,
Okay.
and we also had a response to your Article 7.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Did you? Okay, we've got Article 21, sick leave, Article 24, attendance, Article 26, seniority, and Article 39, maintenance, education, and training. And all the changes should be highlighted, except in section 3 of Article 24, I rearranged some things.
So we just need to read that section. Well, it looks to me, and team, y'all look at it, I'm looking at sick leave, that's what we discussed. So that should be the TA. It's just an
At the top, we wanna add
Add the date to
the
the
revised,
rise company.
revised.
Am I right? Yes.
What was that?
They wanna add the
The,
revision date
to the handbook, what handbook we're referring to is down here, we was given yesterday, 5/6/2021.
It's fine.
But that should be a
And
TA.
below too.
Yeah. So that should be a TA with those, with that, date added in.
Maybe the attendance.
Let's look at seniority first, because attendance, we know we got to read. She said the highlighted parts of this too. Seniority, do you guys see any problem with seniority? That's it.
Look at the other one, the last one. I'm not gonna find it, right, but-
See who gets to it first.
The front and back thing is messing me up. What's in this? What's in this?
I'll lead you to it.
Probably will.
Here you go.
So we got classification senior, first and second years of service, most recent table.
Well, that's what we talked about yesterday. On the backside. We talked about.
Well, I thought we were doing, I thought there were two seniorities.
It's on the, it was, departmental classification.
Is this
It was in the departmental classification, I don't know.
correct? But.
So there's really no reason to specify what departmental seniority is because the accrual rates are set by county policy. So whether you switch departments countywide, your accrual rates follow you, for your
Yes.
time in service. So there didn't, for the purposes of the bargaining unit seniority, there didn't seem to be a reason to even specify what that was as a separate category of seniority.
Okay, well, I was trying to figure out why you took it out. Now you
That's
just
why.
described it. Okay. Okay, yes, it's fine, Chris.
Okay.
Okay. Then we got maintenance.
So the 26 we can see as well. We're gonna look over the 24 we had. We just wanna go through the ones quickly without.
Sure. During our caucus.
And then 39, Jim, you looked at it?
Got it in it right now.
Okay.
So the language I added in the paragraph about required certifications just mirrors what we already TA'd in Article 36.
Okay.
So, it says may result in immediate reassignment or termination.
Because if you're a Tech 1, where are you gonna go?
So could we put parentheses reference Tech 1? because,
I mean, I think
because
that's
it's
sufficient.
open-ended right now. It could mean that you terminate a Tech 3, because you choose to terminate him instead of reassigning him back
It's
to.
not a terminable offense.
Yeah, I think some of our hang up with some of our discussions yesterday when you said it could be CDLs, it could be something similar to that. Not specifying it is what Mike's talking about, is just open-ended.
No, I think the only thing, and Crystal had me right, or she sent me out a little bit. The job description and what's required of those.
The maintenance technician.
The maintenance technician,
Yeah, don't get maintenance technician, they can't.
the
be
two
fired.
things that are required.
But maybe if we put that in there, as a job description is
If
what's
you
referred to.
fail to maintain those.
Right.
That's
That's
covered in
a, that's a
36.
requirement in order to be able to fill the position. Having the ASCs,
So why wouldn't you put that they will be, their wages will be reduced and they will be reclassified?
No,
To
I
a
think
lower
it's
they're not really
classification.
classified, they're still in the same classification.
Because we only have technician, but you guys have the progression. Failure to successfully complete the required examination or maintain the required certifications may result in immediate reassignment or termination. So what Mr. Moreno is speaking to is if they lose that air AC, whatever that certification.
AS
that-
608, 609?
Thank you. Most of them require that, right?
Yeah.
Well, the Tech 1 requires that one, but the other two may require a little bit more. So if the Tech 2 loses one of those certifications, but not the AC or whichever, they go to Tech 1. If the Tech 1 loses that certification, they don't meet minimum qualifications.
So
I
how about
think
we
we're
put
all on the same
parentheses?
page about it, it's the verbiage that's.
Why don't we put with, in reference to termination, parentheses, loss of 608, 609, AC 608.
Why don't we do this, since it's in Article 36, which you already TA'd, say required certifications for the employee's assigned job classification may result in immediate reassignment or termination, because the classification is maintenance tech.
And all that other stuff is just the extra pay. Let's go read Article 36. If we read Article 36, go back and look at Article 36 that we already TA'd, and that's dealing with the maintenance tech classification. And that's dealing with the termination. We've already established that, again, Tech 1, Tech 2, Tech 3, Master Tech, none of that matters. Only their job classification is maintenance technician. So like when you go on the website to apply, when you apply, may already be a Master Tech. And when you come in the door and you provide those ASC certifications, then that's how you receive your extra pay and your wage progression deal, But the maintenance technician position is 608, 609 certificated, EPA standard, AC refrigerant. You got that, you able to come on board and be hired. That's what it says in 36. So I think it's.
I don't have a problem, we use the same exact language.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, as long as we use that, yeah.
We want to use the same exact verbiage from there to here. That's actually what we were looking for.
Okay.
Anything else, Jim, that you see?
No, everything else looks all right.
Okay, so then after those changes, Wes, we can TA that as well?
Yes, sir.
And, so let's go back and read over attendance, y'all, attendance section 3, time occurrences. So in the first part, I see you kind of cleaned up the order of it. My only question and concern is what's the time frame? Is it a year, is it 6 months, is it 2 months, is it 18 months?
Well, you'll note in the discipline article that infractions that are older than 2 years can't be
yeah, and instances like this in transit, that you understand, I hope, is that this is not about being held against you for 2 years. These things are usually in a rolling year for us.
So, I'm sorry, what are we speaking?
So not when these.
Time
absences
occurrences?
and time occurrences roll off.
So usually they drop off in a year, so in a rolling year,
We're not gonna agree to that.
that's industry standard, I mean, that's,
Actually-
we're not gonna agree to 2 years. Well,
You don't have to, but I'm not gonna agree to let it roll off at the end of.
do you even understand why they're in the contract and what they mean?
Yeah, I believe I do.
So please explain it to me from your perspective.
From my perspective, is this, you have occurrences that at the end of the 12-month period, they drop, and you get a fresh start in the next year. That those previous occurrences cannot be utilized or counted against the employee regarding disciplinary action. The standard that I'm used to anyway, and I believe is our practice in HR, is 2 years.
This is regarding, this is late reports?
Yeah, that's what.
This is late reports?
Late reports.
So no late reports, I know how many late reports it take to actually get a time occurrence. But also too, again, this is where, because I understand transit, I hear the direction, attempting to mimic the way. it's
They
getting
mimic what they want to mimic, but go on.
But just hear me out. What I'm hearing, that's even more the reason why we have to go more to the PTO accrual of leave. Because now what that does, that allows the utilization of the sick leave and those, what we call floating holidays, but we'll just call it accrual, right? To be able to be utilized so that we can still be successful. So where now it won't be as many time occurrences, well, call outs or late reports, because now we gotta manage to be able to meet the needs for us to kind of look like.
So did I read
But
earlier?
we're not 9 to 5 employees. We're not 8-hour employees.
We still, well,
The
actually.
nature of our business
We,
is,
well,
We report 2 or 3 times a day sometimes.
and we work 16, 18 hours, thank you. And we report 16, 18 hours.
Sometimes, not that, we run a
We
schedule.
should get spread time.
In our
You still have
contract,
to show up on time.
in our
We should get
contract,
spread
you
time.
got forced overtime.
Which is common in transit contracts.
And if you don't have operators, and I'm a low person just coming in the door, I may be doing that 3-4 months on a regular basis, working 6-7 days a week. Is that not true?
6 days, yeah, yes, sir, I can't.
So,
say that's
so,
true.
I mean, it's a fact. I mean, my point to Mr. West and everybody else in this room is, we can't think we're applying the rules evenly across the board, and the work is not evenly done across the board. If I'm working 6 days a week, sometimes up to 16 hours a day, that is a lot. And that's not the same as a county employee, period. Now, I understand county will have conditions where at times things happen out of the norm. The norm for a bus driver is, for this kind of stuff is, you force me to work, and then you tell me that I can only have a certain amount of occurrences and they take 2 years to come off. That is not reasonable, Wes. And that's
Most of them.
that's
are
with passion.
I'm 1 minute late for work,
I'm
I'm 30 seconds late for
I'm
work.
speaking off of passion now.
I understand.
That-
I understand your position.
that-
And I really do.
And I have a,
That we can't have the rules apply to a scenario which are apples and oranges, and these are apples and tangerines. It's so much difference here, and it's already stuff that we agreed to. Operators get up 2-3 o'clock in the morning, they got splits in the middle of their days.
they
I
come
mean,
cover overtime.
There's so much different in complexity of what the county workers are used to doing. Now, if it was an 8-hour day, I would say you're right. If this was an hourly employee and they get off at 7 and come in at 3 or come in at 2 and get off at whatever time, I understand it. And if they had to work a little overtime on a day here, a day there, it doesn't make a difference. But I will say the bottom 50 people at a time which just happened not long ago, if not still happening, where you don't have enough operators, they are drafted to work mandatory every time they're available to work. Which means if I run my work assignment and I'm available for work that's up, I have to work it. And then if I choose not to come in and work, I'm getting hit with an occurrence on that side. It's a catch-22. It's set up for failure, not success.
I understand your position.
I mean, we got operators that report at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then they get off at 8, and then they have a split where they're sitting, they gotta go home for 4 hours, and then they could be asked to come back, you know, and work overtime at the end of their shift, and hey, 2 hours after you get off work, can you come back and work another shift? So they're reporting 3 times a day.
So I have a question. For the first paragraph in section 3, the only thing that this is pertaining to is basically showing up to your shift on time.
That's
Is that
correct.
the same understanding? Okay.
Yes.
And it's not uncommon, you know, because we're not.
We don't get grace periods.
Yeah, we're not a county
Get
employee.
30 seconds late. I'm sorry.
Sorry. We're not a county employee that, yeah, I'm late, I'm 2 minutes late, but nothing got hurt, no one got harmed. We're in a situation where we understand that it's difficult, you know. Another thing, they don't want employees hanging around break rooms for all day long, because we can't allow 20, 30 people hanging out in the break room all day long, okay? So they're encouraged to go on home, go home. You know, you got 3 hours before you come back, go home. And you know, it's concerning, because I know there's not employees, yes, occasionally some wake up too late in the morning, occasionally. But some of the occurrences are caused because they had to report back to work, and they got caught up in traffic coming back to work. They're 1 minute late, 30 seconds late. And the language that I saw you guys prepare before, that's no longer there anymore. So now, I'm suspecting, Mr. Kimbrell, I'm asking you this, so if someone's 1 minute late, you're sending them home.
No,
No.
that's not what it says.
Are you going,
But it gives you the right, it gives you the right to allow me to work. Somewhere I just read that. You want the ability to allow me to work or not. So,
That's in the old contract too.
right,
we had a 5-minute grace period.
but the old contract, the only difference is, and this is where my passion is, the old contract, they don't stay on there for 2 years.
It was 90 days.
If I get an occurrence, it doesn't stay on there 2 years.
So are you?
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. Curtis, I certainly understand your passion, and I appreciate it. I understand what you're saying, where you're coming from. When we are talking about attendance and showing up on time, I recently, in the last year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years maybe, had an employee file a grievance because he wasn't specifically told that he had to be at work on time.
Well, Wes,
I mean, that's serious.
Wes-
That's serious. That's what that was.
No.
Nobody
I'm-
told me I had to be at work on time.
I'm smiling because that ain't our issue by far.
So,
Our
yes,
members
I
go
absolutely
through
expect employees to show up for work on time. And yes, I know there's gonna be the flat tire. I know there's gonna be the accident that blocked the interstate. I know there's gonna be things. I get that. I understand that. We're not unreasonable in that regard. But I've been at this long enough to know that you will have the same employee that will routinely, and as a matter of practice, show up late for work just because. And hey, I'm 5 minutes late, continuously. Well, why don't you get up 5 minutes early? I don't know. It's not my thing. The standard is to be at work on time. And if things happen, okay, things happen, I understand that. Nobody's gonna ding anybody because there was a crash on the interstate was blocked and couldn't get through. Or, hey, had a flat tire, come out, walked out of the house, we've all been there. Their tire is flat, well, here we go. But you make the phone call, hey, I'm gonna be late, I got a flat tire, I'll be there just as quick as I can. We're not unreasonable in that regard.
Right, and what's in front of us speaks to that. I think that that's not our argument. And I'm expecting your transit director to support me on what I'm saying into certain facts. Operators just don't come to work late. They understand scheduling, they gotta move a bus, they gotta pre-trip a bus. And I'm not saying that you don't have an employee that just ain't cut out for transit. I would say that majority of your workers at ECAT don't get hit with being late continuously. And I'm gonna name one I just had dinner with last night. I just found out too. DeWitt has no occurrences. He's probably one of your oldest workers age-wise. It's a standard. It's just like being in the military and training. You understand it's cardinal sins. Don't be late for work. Don't be early driving the bus till you stop. It's a cardinal sin to beat the schedule. There's just certain things that don't happen. And I think that's built into every operator. Now, maintenance, I might not be making this argument. I'm a maintenance guy, right? And we fall under a little bit more of what the county structure is by coming to work, reporting, and things like that. Bus operators is not that. Most of them, go ahead, sir.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to say for the record that even when I seen this again, and I hear again, I've asked to have a month worth of late reports pulled for me. We don't actually have a problem with late reports with our employees.
That's all I wanted you to be able to help me with.
Well, I'm just, and so that's why, again, when I hear the passion, I hear the fight, but then I also hear this side too. Like in my mind, they could say, it could be said that it could be a 5-month period, that it could be a 25-month period that I late reports, or a 3-year period. We don't really have a problem with late reports. That's why, in my mind, and it's just me, I was like, well, you know what, if that's not even a fight that I even want to have, because I don't have a problem with late reports, and I can show the late reports. Because I pulled a month's worth of late reports. I took the late reports from December of 2019 to January 2020, and I also got the most recent late reports. I got to the full, and we don't have a problem with it. I'm willing to, that's one thing we don't have a problem. We don't have a problem with late reports.
Would it be fair to say that possibly, because first of all, I want to say, I think county employees are amazing, especially the ones I represent. I think they're great, roads and bridges. But I want to say, could it be fair to say that you're unaware that some of your folks could show up a minute late, 2 minutes late, and they go, just don't worry about it, keep going? Is that possible?
I will tell you this, is I believe if somebody shows up a minute late today, their normal routine is to be 5 minutes early. Yeah, we're probably not gonna say a whole lot about that.
Okay.
Now, if you show up a minute late today, and a minute late tomorrow, and a minute late the next day, yeah, we're probably gonna say
Both of
something.
y'all going.
He knows, I know where he's going. You know you can't do that in transit, right?
Hold on a second.
If you don't show up for your shift on
If you're
time-
telling me, Mr. Kimbrough, that the dispatchers ignore someone being late, now you have a problem, because now it's not being consistent. Because because I hear that all the time from an operator, hey, so-and-so shows up late, and because they're buddy-buddy with the supervisor, they don't get written up. And I argue to you, we need to be consistent. If someone's late, they're late.
We work hard to be consistent.
Right, but I think here, I gotta jump in. I think what we're asking for is not the way it's outlined. The way it's outlined, we agree on. What we're insinuating is the time that it takes to drop off for no discipline. What is reasonable is what I'm trying to find amongst both of us. We think, I don't know what the process is now. So
It's 90 days.
So every 90 days.
They drop off after 90 days. Now, do I think that you mentioned a year. To me, the membership's gonna go, whoa, we went from 90 to a year, but you know what? I think a year was reasonable. That's why I didn't say a word.
I was
You
just
said it.
speaking on what I know is in the industry. that if I get an occurrence today and I'm late today, it falls off a year later. Every property has something different. But me, what would be reasonable for both parties is what's important. We want to agree to the language, that's not it. But I think we also got to have a time frame. 2 years is a long time for, but you won't have no, you think he's having a hard time finding operators now? Terminating people off of this, even though we know we just said.
Well, that's countywide. I mean, we're having a hard time finding employees, but our standard is 2 years. That's our practice. That's our.
I'm not arguing that.
It's 2 years.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just arguing that.
You work in fire has crazy shifts as well. Corrections has crazy shifts, demanding shifts that man, they're right now, they're on, like I said yesterday, they're on mandatory overtime. But the time frame for infractions and disciplinary is 2 years, and it rolls off in 2 years.
So let me ask the question, Wes.
Sure.
So, okay, that's your standard, that's what you all want?
That's what-
Then
that's our
clarify something different to me so I can get a good grasp, because you keep saying that's our standards, and you look over at Crystal because that's HR. What is the position of you, Mr. Kimbrough, regarding individuals asking for taking time off, in what increments?
The question was, I'm sorry, Mike.
What increments?
I don't mean to be argumentative, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but what's it? The question is, how long do these things stay or can be utilized before they roll off? And that's what's at question.
I'm trying to balance, because I keep hearing it said, this is what we do, this is what we do, and it's what we do.
Well, it's what
At the
Kansas
county
City
level.
County does.
Now, but it doesn't feel from this side that you're actually following the standards for everything. So I want to.
We are, absolutely.
So will the operators be able to use their annual leave and their sick leave in 2-hour increments?
That's
Whatever
not the
that is.
question, Mike. That's not the question. That's not what's, that's
I know,
not.
I'm trying
that
to
is
get,
not
I'm
the
trying to
question
find
at
out if
hand.
we're consistent in what you do with the others.
That is not the question at hand. We talked about this yesterday. Sure, there's caveats in different areas, caveats in fire, there's caveats in corrections, there's caveats in animal services and how they do their own calling. I mean, sure, there's certain caveats. Absolutely. You can't say,
So isn't going to a 1 year, where I'm giving up from 90 days right now to a 1 year, isn't that a caveat for us? Rather than
why
2
should y'all
years?
be treated any different?
Because of the type of work we do, we report 2-3 times a day.
Your
Versus
county- your
do county employees
employees,
report
that-
2-3
we
times
are
a day?
all- We are all county employees.
Yeah, see, that's the answer, Wes,
We are
it's
all
not
county
working for me. Because I see
I have
the
public works
potential.
workers, I have corrections workers, I have development service workers, I have animal shelter workers, I have engineering workers, we all have workers.
And they report 1 time a
They're
day.
all county employees.
Can I ask the question? Because I know the question was asked. Would this be an argument if we're able to, if our employees in the mass transit department are able to utilize their, accrual leave in 2-hour increments? Would this be an argument?
To me, yes. And I don't wanna say it's an argument. I'm trying to find a middle ground to say, I understand that police officers, firefighters have crazy schedules. Never do they come close to our schedules. Never, Wes, and I must be
And
honest.
I get that, and I do appreciate that.
And I'm not
Really
trying
do.
to take away from them, I just want that on the record. I'm not trying to-
And I certainly appreciate the hours that, in the schedule, I appreciate, the long hours and the infrequent schedules, I can appreciate that. But I don't understand why that should be a given to be treated any different than the rest of the employees.
Because we don't
It's
work
2
like
years.
the rest of the employees.
Well, there's other employees in fire and corrections, absolutely, you don't work like they do. You don't work like Public Works does, you don't work like Solid Waste does. I get that, and I understand that, I just don't understand why I should give and treat these transit workers or transit employees, Escambia County employees, different.
And only thing I can go back to say is what I said earlier. your employees on a regular basis do not work 6 days a week, up to 16 hours a day. And that makes a difference in people's sleep pattern. You still gotta be a mother for single women. You still gotta be a mother. You still gotta do homework. You still gotta pick up your kids. You still have to have a family quality of life. You can't just work for the county and that's it, and then you go right back to work. That's what some of your employees are doing at long intervals of time.
Absolutely.
So while it may not happen to the majority of the transit workers, right? It may only happen to the bottom 10. But we should be fair to the bottom 10 that do not work like anybody else in this county. And guess what? As you get a little seniority and you're a little longer, you fall out of that ring. But the toughest part is to be at the bottom, work crazy schedules, make less money, have less benefits, have less time off.
Report early and go home late.
That's tough. So what you just suggested to me, the only thing I have to say is that's the reason why.
Okay.
And I'm not saying and discrediting any other county employee, whether police, fire, because we need them. They protect everybody. So there's always a mutual respect to they work long hours, long shifts, and especially firefighters that go, 3-4 days without even going home. Totally different makeup, understand that, respect that. And I would not argue if they had a caveat because the nature of their work. This is more to us than just, even though we don't have a problem with it, it's more to us about this principle that I have the flexibility not to be terminated after having 6 or 7 occurrences. It's probably longer than that because you got to get a few before you can start getting burgled and stuff. And I don't want to waste our day on just this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
But I was just trying to close out the
Sure.
part, and I think there's a middle ground where it is. I don't think 2 years is fair.
It's like these negotiations right now. We keep scheduling them from 9 to 3 or 9 to 4. Why do we have an end time? Why? Because as far as I'm concerned, I'll work till midnight. And by the way, you can do that. You can just put a start time and not have an end time. And Mark, I talked to Mark about it last night. Mark says, why are you putting an end time? There's no restrictions. I negotiate with public sector entities all the time across this state that I've gone to 11, 12 o'clock at night just to get a contract done. Is it because you want to go home at 4 o'clock? Well, here in this scenario, the description of a young operator, they report at 4:30 in the morning to go to work because they're covering the board. Then they have a split. They have a long day. Some of them are coming home at 8 o'clock at night. Yeah, they got their little 8-hour rest in between, but they're working hard all week long and short rest.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with you that they're working hard. Absolutely.
The quality of life is affected. That's all.
All right, I got one question. Okay, in Article 4, under discipline, you've got, everything drops off in 2 years. That's everything from being not terminated, I'm sorry, being suspended or whatever, everything cannot be used against you after 2 years. And you're saying that same rule applies on the being tardy.
Well, being charged
If you're
will fall
disciplined.
into the disciplinary process, yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think that's the only thing we're stuck on out of that. We appreciate, I mean, the way it's worded, it didn't change the intent. It's worded, to be easily read and accessible, but I think 2 years is, and we'll talk about it in our
Sure, I
caucus.
understand.
Maybe me taking a more of an approach than anybody, but it's not something I believe should be hanging us up. So, these are the ones that need to be signed. And if you don't mind, we would like to take a 15-minute caucus,
Absolutely.
and we'll reach out to Mark during that time
Okay.
and talk about this article and see what other articles we can try to move through pretty quick. There are some that
We'll talk to them about.
we're just words here and there.
Sure, absolutely.
So we should be ready about 10 after 11.
Okay, we'll be back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alright, good to go.
All right, we appreciate the time for a caucus. We did talk to our attorney, Mark Floyd. We would ask that if Ms. Who, let me say it right, Kristen, I didn't get frustrated, I'm trying to get it right.
It's not like we haven't been doing this for, several times.
Yeah.
You got Rod's name wrong yesterday too.
Yeah, I'm bad with names, so I don't wanna, make anybody upset. If you could email Mark, the counties 5, 6, 7, and 10, we would like him to intervene.
10, or part-time is not 10?
28.
That was like 20 something.
28.
It's 28, my bad.
Five, six,
I was
seven,
looking at
28.
10 and 28.
And-
If you can email those to him and send him the team link, he will get on with us this afternoon and try to work with you guys through this. And if you want to work with him separately or something, he just didn't want to make sure, he didn't want to violate
He
his
wants to make
laws.
sure it's in the sunshine too.
Right. So he will get on and try to help us do that. So we'd appreciate that. And if you can copy me and Mike on that email, we'd appreciate it.
I don't have them as separate documents.
Okay.
So I'll have to work on that.
Okay.
Or what do you mean you don't, do you have like all of it in order? Is that what you have, or?
I have several documents, some proposals, different dates. I have a separate document of pending articles, I have a separate document of TA articles. So
Okay.
I'll have to put those into one document.
Okay.
We appreciate it. So, going over some of the things we discussed yesterday, Article 4, which is discipline of employees. You guys said y'all were okay with adding the first sentence verbally yesterday.
No, we said that we were holding that one,
Okay.
pending the
5 and
5,
6.
6.
Let me put that with 5 and 6. That's driving me crazy to remember that. Article 7 is open. He's gonna work with us on that. Job postings, we're ready to TA.
Great.
Adding that under section 3 revised 5/6/21. You'll
Oh,
see
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Article 18, we want to hold off and have some conversation. We heard what you said yesterday. We still want to have some conversation amongst ourselves, but that was a longer conversation for us. Holidays. We just need to understand it. So we're ready to TA off on holidays. The problem we're having is, after a short discussion today, trolley operators are working 36 hours and currently get benefits.
We get five paid holidays a year.
Right. And you said that you don't wanna pay them that, but they're working
Well,
36
it's not
hours.
necessarily, it's not that they're trolley workers, it says that they're part-time employees. And part-time employees do not get holiday pay. or-
But they get health care because of the law, right?
If they work 30 hours or more, that's ACA.
They're working 36 hours on a regular basis, so they're closer to full-time employees than part-time employees. So we wanted to have some discussion around it, because I know you said that part-time employees don't get benefits.
But
Well,
two
our-
employees.
They're kinda.
Yeah, let me
between.
clarify that a little bit. Relief, we have relief and part-time. Relief do not get holiday pay, but part-time do.
Part-time gets holiday.
Part-time does get part-time, not relief. That's what I think he was saying yesterday.
I didn't think they did, but they got sick leave and annual leave accrual on a pro rata basis.
Yeah, so we can double check that,
And-
but
Let's double check it out.
And they're getting it now. They're,
I understand.
yeah, so That's the only thing hanging us up. But we'll be ready to, if we can clarify that, we'll be ready to sign.
Okay.
Attendance. You agreed to strike out section 1 that we asked for. You were gonna add the language in section 2 about no call, no show. And
They did.
And
We
the
already
only,
gave you that one.
huh?
We gave you that one with the revisions?
That's in your new little package. Just get
One Mike stole.
Okay, my apologies, it's on the backside. The only thing that's holding us up is trying to find a compromise on the time occurrences.
Okay, we'll agree to the holiday pay.
For the trolley operators? Okay, well, then that's TA
for,
for holidays 19. That would be a TA.
19,
I'm sorry?
19 will be a TA.
Okay.
So when you draft up a new version for TA, they make it easier if you draft up 2 copies, so we assign 2 copies.
Man, y'all are needy.
And just ask
We
for,
are needy.
just ask
I
for
want an
that,
original too. I
that
don't like
revision,
copies.
that revision, to be added in section 1, just 5-6 revision. So that's good, thank you.
What was that?
The revision to the handbook is in section 1. Just put that the revision for that. 24 would just, the only thing that's holding us up, Wes, is trying to find a compromise on time occurrences, that discussion we had earlier.
I understand.
But that's the only thing on that one. On 28, we wanted to get Mark Floyd involved in on that too. That was the one with the part-timers where you were saying you didn't want to, we didn't want you to have an open end, and we suggested 10 that was currently in the contract, but we think there's a way to get through that. That's the only thing holding 28 up. And 32 runs days oftentimes, that's a TA for us.
Great. So can I ask?
So we're really close.
Can I ask on 24 with the occurrences, time occurrences? Let me ask you if you're open to this. If it's 1 to 5 minutes late, it will come off in 1 year. Anything beyond 5 minutes would be the 2 years.
Mike, I feel like it has to be consistent with the rest of the county. 2 years. I know.
I'm gonna say it again.
I understand your position.
How many times they gotta report versus the other county
I
employees?
understand.
Trying to protect the employees that
Sure,
are
absolutely.
forced to spend their gas money. You know, to be honest with you, Wes, and I know you don't understand this because you don't see a lot of transit contracts. One thing that we don't have that most transit contracts have is spread time. When there's, so what that, you know what that is? So that would be if I'm forced to have a split shift, so I'm always forced to spend my gas driving to and from work 2 to 3 times a day. They get compensated with some spread time and paid. We don't have that in this.
It's the time you start, the time you end is more than the normal day for an employee. So your day is tied up 12 plus hours, you get additional premium.
So I'm just saying, you know, we didn't ask for that. I mean, Mr. Kimber, you know, we're not asking for that. But this is something, I'm trying to protect those employees that are in that group, not the senior ones that have a straight run. I'm trying to protect those employees that are forced to come and go because they've got a split shift or they're asked to work overtime and they come back in a couple hours and do some overtime. You know, that's a lot of potential that they could get a 1 minute late, you know, late 30 seconds or 1 minute.
Well, we have the UKG system, it's set up for a 7-minute rounding rule, so nobody's gonna get a tardy because they're 1 minute late. It'll be 5 to 7 minutes if they clock in after 7 minutes.
We don't
Now,
clock
if there's
in.
a consistency as far as,
We don't clock in.
you don't
I
clock
gotta
in
cut
now?
you off.
Wait, they're about to
Yeah,
throw that, they're about to throw that at us, it's brand new, they're about to put it.
Everybody on clock.
So why didn't you say that from the beginning?
Sorry.
Well, no.
I apologize for cutting you
Yeah.
off.
No,
Thank
when
you.
we went to caucus, that's one of the things that Ms. Crystal said she was gonna make sure she bring up,
Yeah.
that's gonna.
So 5 to 7 minutes.
No, 7-minute rounding rule. So if you
Good
clock
luck with
in
that one.
5 minutes, there's education coming, I promise. There'll be some more like training purposes
It's
as
a
far
training.
as that.
Well, you
Training.
need to educate your dispatchers to know that they're not gonna be writing people up.
All
Yeah,
county employees.
all county employees will be, but the education portion, the training is actually available, next week and the following week, where everybody will be going to this training, so they'll actually get an understanding. Carlos actually went yesterday, Mary, Ms. Dompier went yesterday. I didn't get to go yesterday because I'm here, but no, there's gonna be training that's gonna be available, so that I'll be able to sit down with you, so you can have an explanation to be able to explain to employees. I know they've seen the time clocks go up already, but again, the process won't begin without everyone being educated on how it actually works. And again, I know that we don't actually have time occurrence problems. For this month, the month of November, we've actually only had 4 time occurrences. And they, under the current system that they're gonna go to, those won't even have any time occurrences. With the 15-minute added in pre-trip to everyone's schedule, with this new technology, the new technology is gonna be available. I actually, as I told you before, I know that the drivers have said that they don't even get breaks in between. They use the restroom, having 5 minutes, coming off a route, well, in 5 minutes, use the restroom, get some bite to eat. With this new technology, I put rules in there with the technology that'll be able to allow the employees to be able to get a time to do those things that they need. Kind of like our maintenance employees, where you guys get breaks. I
Well,
want to be
that's
consistent.
also part of scheduling. Management has
A
to figure out a
management job.
schedule where there's relief. I mean,
It's-
there's
it's-
times when you go to Pensacola State College and the college is closed and you can't go to the bathroom, you're stuck.
In the text message you told me, it's a dawn of a new era. It's a time for us to be able to move forward. I want us to be able to drive towards excellence and success in our organization, and we're going to push the needle at ECAT to be successful. And being successful means that we're going to do the things that normal transit agencies have done that we haven't done in the past in regards to. I
So-
seen it. I want us to be able to have. I don't like hearing employees tell me they can't even use the restroom. They have to use the restroom.
That's a fact.
They
There's
get in.
people that
That's
suffer
right.
out there.
But we're gonna do away with that.
Yeah.
And that's a management responsibility to show that we care. That's what I've heard since I've been
We
here.
have
We don't care.
employees that wear depends.
Yeah, well,
Did you know that?
no, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
female employees, some
But
of them
our
are-
employees will not have to do those types of things.
No, I'm gonna keep going. So now that I know that, so the last question, so we can TA this, is this. So if an employee walks in and they're 2 minutes late and they walk up and they clock in, are they gonna get their run and continue on? Is that what's gonna happen?
Because they still, they're.
Up to 5 to 7 minutes, what Crystal just said, is that correct?
Not 5 to 7, 7-minute rounding.
7 minutes. So up to 7 minutes, they're gonna be able to, they're not, the dispatcher's not gonna say, hey, no, you're not going out on that run or whatever.
Because they should be doing
They should
pre-trip
still be.
anyways. And my management staff should actually be months, they should be making sure that pre-trip is done. Right now, we're averaging, our pre-trip inspection only averaging about 3 minutes per pre-trip, and that's with everybody. We're only averaging 3 minutes, when I actually have built in 15 minutes to provide pre-trip. And we got to make sure that we doing pre-trip, because pre-trip is the first line of defense for our maintenance technician.
You're saying to me that people are doing a pre-trip on the bus in 3 minutes?
That's our average right now. Some people are doing it in 1 minute. It's,
Pre-trip?
again, I can actually show you the reports, but that's not an employee problem, that's a management problem, and we'll fix it.
That's because, we could talk about that, but I agree with you that that's problematic. So Curtis, now that I know that for 7 minutes, they're not gonna be given up, there's a big difference between somebody that's late, 1 or 2, 3 minutes, compared to being late, I can agree with 2 years.
Wes, we heard that we got another TA.
I will follow that up with, I don't expect an employee to be 7 minutes late every day.
No, no, I'm just saying, neither do we.
Okay.
It's not, we're not gonna promote
We- we-
that.
I
got
told
to
you,
you.
that ain't our goal. Our goal is to provide the best service and for me, I think people need to be on time in pre-trip buses. Putting in pre-trip is very important. If it's
Absolutely.
right when you leave, then you have less problems
That's
as
right.
you're out there on the road, so.
That's right, I
it's-
agree.
We got it, but good to be able to reach a TA. So if y'all are feeling generous anywhere else, then we're all right with you feeling a little generous, but that's where we are from yesterday.
John Foster?
Yeah.
Mike, I did.
I missed that one? I missed that one. That was, okay.
We can try to steal them.
Oh, I know which one I was looking at.
Thank you.
Safety and training, we haven't talked about it.
Yeah, so I think we should take a little break for lunch. And after lunch, we should go over some of the other open articles. And yeah, Mark will be with us on some, but, you know, we will give you a response on 18 that you gave us yesterday. Hopefully y'all can work through, nope, just finished 24, so that's good. Oh, 28, y'all could have some discussion on 28, that's important to us. We're not asking for the store, we're just asking for some parameters. Thank you. And I made a comment this morning, about labor management meetings. We had a little discussion during our break about that too. And, we're really comfortable with the direction that management from you down is going, with building relationships and doing things. So we're willing to take that off the table as you suggested,
Okay.
to keep us moving.
Yeah, I think it's better to be able to communicate at any point in time. Maybe not so structured, you know,
No.
we can communicate. I think that's good.
But things were not in a good place, but they're in a really good place now, and
Sure.
we're comfortable with it.
Great.
So thank you. So we withdraw that. And we'd like to take a little lunch break, and we'll still be having some dialogue about what we have open.
Okay.
But we believe that, what was it, 15 is still open. Jury duty, we think we should be able to get through stuff like jury duty, bereavement.
We considered those to be rolled into 8. Those are all addressed in the HR manual.
So all the time we discussed on bereavement, now that's no longer being considered? Is that what
And
you're saying?
we've communicated that, and actually our proposal on the April 16th, those were both vacated.
So what she's saying is, for bereavement, you have to use your sick leave. So we're going.
I understand their position.
We not only lost paid holidays, floating holidays and our birthday, now they want to take away bereavement.
I got you, but some certain things may have to go to an impasse process.
Absolutely. I understand.
But whatever's open, we'd like to try to close out is all I was suggesting. And if that's the
It's gotta be
county's
good, then.
position
Then
that
employees
it's
will like
tied
that.
into that, then we get it, we can continue to move on some of the.
I understand, yeah, absolutely.
Right, the goal is to try to get through as much as possible.
Right.
I'll make sure I communicate when it's
And-
taken away,
And I would,
where it came from.
I would only ask, Wes, that y'all have some consideration and conversation around. We'd ask that you postpone it, the hearing on the 6th, not cancel, postpone it to give us an opportunity to continue to work through getting a contract with you versus sending so much to impasse. We think there's still things that on here, there's things that we think you might not give, and we're cool with sending to impasse, but we think there's still things on the list that we can resolve.
Well, we got some time to work today.
Yeah, well, we definitely, but just wanted to put that out there that, you know, we think that even after today, there's things that we can do if we have another session or so. So, to consider that would be nice. What time you wanna try to come back? You wanna,
1 o'clock?
yep, that's perfect. We can try to get it in at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to email 5, 7, and 28. Can I send them to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the link.
I don't have that, so that's why I'm sending this.
Oh,
person.
okay. I'm sorry.
You good? Okay.
And just, oh. you
I
turned
haven't
it off?
touched it yet, no sir.
And after lunch, will you be able to have the other TAs for us to sign ready?
I will try.
Okay. Not a rush. Thank you, Chris. We're ready.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Hold on.
Wes,
We got the Microsoft Teams up?
I don't need one. Just on Article, thank you.
You wanna wait for Mark? You wanna get Mark up?
I don't need one for this.
Okay.
Article 18, we had our discussion on, we'd like to offer another counter. I'm gonna just try to read it off. Existing employees that currently get 3 weeks or more vacation under Chart B, which is the current one, for the life of the contract shall receive vacation accruals as currently done. And the third year of the contract, everyone will accrue, everybody will have the same accrual. So we're asking them to just have it the first 2 years the way it's done for 3 weeks or more, and then on the third year of the contract, they would phase into what everybody else is doing.
Take it, yeah. Talk about it.
And then, go ahead. No, I'm finished.
The article that was limiting the, part-time operators,
Yes.
we can agree to that.
You said you can agree to it, so the 10? Okay, well, that's a TA too, man. Thank you, we appreciate it. Huh? Yeah, that's what I said. Is Mark on, or did you text him and tell him that they're on?
I think this is their originals.
So, Article 28, Mike, with TN. 28 part-timers with TN.
Now left your original there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought those were the three copies. You get those three.
So you signed off.
On 30, yeah, let me get the copies for you. She's so pretty. Good. 10, 19, and 32. There's 1, 2 copies. Sorry, Bill. 1, 2 copies.
It's always the maintenance department.
They didn't get one either. They didn't get a
It's always
copy
the
either.
maintenance department.
I thought you said you had two.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
They always need something done as the maintenance department.
So, just
I'll
so
make sure you
it's
got
on the record, we handed you 10, Article 10, Article 19, and Article 32, and those have been TA.
Yes, ma'am. And we just agreed that when you can get it to us with TA, Article 28. Did you reach out to Matt?
I think waiting for others to join, that's what it says. I'll text him.
I should make
Hello, this is Mike, can you hear me?
Oh, really?
Hey, Mike.
Okay, we'll work on something else, and when you come in, just kind of let us know. Okay, good. Do me a favor, text me and let me know you send it to me, okay? Okay, great, thanks, man.
All right, so he's not ready yet. He's working on a counter proposal from what was sent to him earlier.
So why don't we talk about 13, safety. At some point, we gotta talk about.
Safety and training?
Safety.
Look, in this month, I jumped back on because I was asked it for a time, for this particular time period. Are you, I didn't hear you, Michael. Did you say that, Mark isn't available?
No, Mark, he said that he just got the counters about 10 minutes ago. Not the counters, the articles we requested, 5, 6, and what was it, 7? Was there another one? I can't remember, I think there was.
He said
just
5,
keyed
7,
it.
28.
28, yeah, and,
Well, we just,
but we'll be able to tell Mark that's off the table now, but, and he's drafting a counter to those, and then he says he's going to notify me as soon as he gets them. I mean, once he's done drafting them, we're gonna take a quick caucus, he'll explain them to us, and then we'll bring you guys into the conversation.
So,
Okay,
But, so I thought, Mike, right now, we would work on something different.
okay, good, that's great. I'll stay tuned and, Kristen, whenever you want me to get back on, I'll be available.
thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everybody, good luck.
So,
are y'all open for 13 discussion, so safety and training?
sure.
The last one that I have proposal from y'all, if I'm correct, is on 416.
No, they gave us a little, didn't they?
Did they?
Yeah.
I don't have it.
It doesn't have a date at the top, but we got a new one recently, right?
Well, I didn't get it.
Yeah, it's got, that's the same one that we've been doing. Yep,
Same one.
It's the same one. though, right?
last April.
It's the same thing. Okay, so let us skim through it while we can ask questions.
I do want to say to us that there's some safety language that's coming down the pipe that just got put in the infrastructure bill that everybody will have to follow. It's about having a safety, I don't know whether it's a committee or a safety process that has both joint union management before the plan, the normal plan that's sent to the FTA. Has
The piece
that.
of the actual, yeah, so it's a safety committee. I talked to you all about this, yesterday. So with the PTAS, it will be, as you stated, it will be a safety committee that has to have, bargaining unit members and as well as non-bargaining members as well as management. They all have to have, monthly safety committee meetings in the PTAS, before it's actually, approved and sent up. It's regulatory guidelines, and that has been checked off by both the union and the management of the facility, so, no, that's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It's currently not that way. Most transit employees, safety department goes through, sends it up to the FTA. So that's something that we will have to, whether we put it in the language or not, we still gonna have to mandate it.
Sure.
And I'm glad you know about it, Mr. Kimball, because I know about it, I've been briefed on it, but I haven't been given the specific language.
So the state of Florida, state of Florida still requires, for transit agencies in the state of Florida still have an SSPP.
Right.
But the whole idea of having a PTAS is that now you won't have to have an SSPP, PTAS, and your maintenance plan,
Right, it's
everything will be
one plan.
done, well, one plan. And it's all approved by everyone.
And there's supposed to be some funding that comes behind it for safety. So that's,
We're gonna-
that's,
yeah.
that's the big, you know.
Yeah, I was excited to see mass transit in the infrastructure bill, because we're gonna pursue that money hard.
Thanks to the ATU.
Well, we're gonna pursue it hard, so.
Yeah. And the
Tell
reason,
them to send us something.
and the reason why I say thanks to the ATU, we made, an endorsement, and President Biden has had our staff at the International at the table through all of it. And surprisingly, the recommendations, went through both the House and the Senate. And they were able to meet on the infrastructure bill. That was pretty amazing after all these years, so.
Yeah, no, it's a good bill, I think. Certainly road and bridge infrastructure, broadband, mass transit. So we're excited about all of those things, so we're gonna work as hard as we can to bring some of that money.
And they funded it, right? They didn't put a bill out there with, so. County, like you said, the county goes after the money, it's gonna really increase the infrastructure of the county, which is really good.
Absolutely.
You got time to look over one?
I'm getting through the first page, I'm on the second page.
And I think the reason why is, we wasn't far off on our last proposal on some of the language.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm ready. Curtis.
Go ahead.
Okay, so on the first page, the only thing that I'd like in section 2 is in the middle of the paragraph where it starts off, failure to attend required safety and training meetings shall result in an unexcused absence. And then it goes on, it says, and the employee will be subject to progressive discipline. I'd like to change it to say, will be subject to progressive discipline and may include termination. Instead of up to and including termination, I just want and may include termination. Hey, Phil. Good. Okay, and then on page 2, okay, it feels like it's inevitable we're going to end up under the incident review board procedure. But my question to you is this: how many people serve on that board?
I don't know.
And then next question: how are they trained, and are they trained in any kind of accidents regarding like mass transit or anything like that?
I would say our risk management participates there, and Crystal may tell me that the makeup of it is that we will, but I'm not overtly familiar.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can I tell you something for the record, just for the record? Currently, under the current collective bargaining agreement that we currently have, where it states that we'll have a Florida Highway Patrol or some form of, right now would be Pensacola Police Department or Escambia County Sheriff. Currently, what has made an accident review board almost impossible is because they don't have the ability to, or they're not even willing to actually provide that service for it, because that's, they say that they can't do that. Escambia County Sheriff is not willing to go against DPD. Florida Highway Patrol is not willing to go against another law enforcement agency. That's why we've had the issues of hold up with the current process that we actually have. And that's why I'm hoping that we can get to a point where we have another way where we can figure out regarding incidents and accidents. But
So
it doesn't work the way we have it right now.
okay. I'm trying to, so what I want, I guess where I'm going with this is that, again, I said at the beginning, it almost feels like it's inevitable we're going to be forced to go into this procedure, but I'm concerned. I'm going under an incident review board, and I'm going under my own experience. I went with a county employee once, and Walker was in this room, in fact, came into the incident review board. They refused to allow the union representative, to represent the employee on the incident review board. They told me that was not the process, that the employee had to represent themselves. Is that true, or was that something that was wrong for them to say to me? I mean, the employee should have a right to have a union represent their their accident on their behalf. Not everybody's capable of representing themselves on an accident, right? And so that was the first thing that caught my attention, and then I noticed the panel was quite large, and I didn't know where all the people came from. And the other concern is, you know, would there be someone that would be appointed that would be tied to the mass transit department?
And
That's not, that's
and
involved.
we should have a representative on there too that's trained. And I don't mean on there for all county business, only when the transit portion come up. We should be able to have a CD person on there too that has some transit experience and transit input from an operator's perspective.
As part of the board or just
As
as
part of the board,
representation?
as part of the board for transit issues. Because it says that y'all, there will be a recommendation made to the mass transit director. Well, we always would want somebody from our perspective to sit on the board and hear the facts and give a perspective from an operator's perspective. But we don't expect somebody for the rest of the county. And then to include what Mike said about if a member wants somebody to help represent them or go into the room with them, they should be able to do that. But we understand that that wasn't the current, you know, we didn't have a contract with the county then, so of course.
Okay.
Under the drug and alcohol screening, it says all employees will be subject to drug and alcohol testing after all vehicle accidents and any related accidents occurring in the course of the scope of the employment. Any positive drug test result following a what it was exactly?
It's just their substance abuse, their policy.
Oh, so it's recognized that the transit department has the drug and alcohol substance abuse with the second chance, correct?
Yeah, well, that's just, that's a part of county.
That's part of the county, isn't it?
Not post-accident.
Not post-accident,
Or reasonable suspicion.
or reason, oh, that's actually, you're correct. Yeah, no, it's fine. That's good.
Only thing we would ask is once again, hate the policy. It's the same thing. That's all.
So, I think that's, let me check the last page. Oh, wait, let me read that one.
So I would like to ask a question. Why would it be the employee's responsibility for providing notice to the union of any disciplinary action administered by the county? Why would that happen? Why would the county or the transit folks be giving the union a copy of any discipline?
Where we at?
So I'm looking at
So if
page
they're
14.
disciplined, you want, that's the intent, is that the employee notifies you guys, if you're saying you want management to notify you guys?
Well, currently, our management makes a disciplinary action, they give the union notice and they give the employee notice. It only reads here that it's the responsibility of the employee, so I just,
Yeah, no, I don't have to find out, because that's currently a current practice where
yeah, it's
any
just,
bar union employee, I'll make sure that they gets accountable.
so we would just ask that that line be stricken.
So under B, it says a qualifying accident is one involving $1,000 or more in property damage and or injury requiring medical treatment, so that's different than what we have currently in our rules and policies manual now, right? Okay, and then it's 5,000 now, and then it goes on a little farther down. The safety manager will shall review and investigate all accidents, incidents involving a county ECAT vehicle, and make a recommendation to the Mass Transit as whether the accident was preventable or not preventable, and the degree. So that leads me to this question. So the current handbook has the description it has, right? So what would be the standards of what preventable and not preventable be? What is that?
So I want to make sure we state this on the record right now again. that's the whole reason why we're gonna have our safety committee, where we'll actually sit down with the union. I know in the past, that has been stated that it hasn't occurred, although the PTAS has been a part of the transit organization for a long time now. We will sit down and we will agree to what our standards are going to be, the union and management, on what's going to be preventable and non-preventable.
So
And that's following FAC 14-9.
Okay, so, but currently, what is the standards? What are we following as the standards right now?
Well, currently in the transit organization, I have to follow the PTAS and SSPP, because that's how I receive the funding. And
Is that
again.
the 3 preventables in a 36-month?
No, sir. No, sir.
It's not?
No, sir.
No, it's probably, I forget the name of the organization, there's a standard out here now.
I can pull the PTAS up right now in SSPP.
I have a copy that you sent me, that you gave me. The P-TASC or the SSP, where would it be?
You can pull either or.
So the SSP says, okay.
We need to take them off, not reading the whole.
So the SSP says,
You guys want? Jim?
dismissal from employment will occur for 3 preventable accidents in a 12-month, he's got marked out 12-month period, 3 preventable injury claims in a 24-month period, and 3 deadly.
Y'all care for Kit Kat? Kit Kat, I'm sorry.
Deadly sin violations in a 36-month period. Is that what we're following right there? I'm a little confused. Is this what they gave?
I'm sorry, Mike.
Right.
Yeah, that's a different question. You said standards, so standards for different.
Okay, well, I'll go on the record, I have no clue as to that, what the standards are of how many preventable accidents we can have. I don't have a clue, because it's all over the
No, I
place.
thought you asked that, what is the standard for preventable? That's different.
Yeah, I understand, and I do wanna ask that too, yes, so I just wanna, I'm a little lost of what that would be, but that,
Well, I just
so
wanna-
that's a separate document. is what
Yes,
you're
sir.
saying.
Well, I just wanna make sure, that it is on the record too, that if the evaluated transit goes up 1395 doesn't know what the standards are, I wanna make sure that those standards are informed, and every employee as well as, your leadership is educated on what's our actual standards. So, I know this is the proper time and place for that, but I'll make sure that we schedule those things.
Okay, I just,
Especially under the new direction.
yeah. And, you know, the knowledge that I have is under the yellow book, the ECAP Policies and Procedures Manual, and it has an ECAP policy, accident policy in there, and that's what I'm aware of. Okay,
We have Mark Bartlett on speakerphone. He's our risk manager.
Okay.
You can speak to the incident review committee or board.
okay,
If
good.
you'd like to ask a question.
Okay, Mark, you want to tell us about the incident review board?
Yes, so it's, normally the individuals from each of the departments, most of them are safety people, and if an incident is over $1,000 and severe enough, then it's reviewed by the incident review board. We did have to be cautious when COVID happened to, kind of do it over the phone or not be in person. But we look at it to see if it was preventable. And then I think there's about 25 people. And then everybody talks and gives their opinion on whether they feel like it was a preventable incident. And then we come to a consensus of whether it was or was not.
And how many did you say?
25 individuals from different departments, is that correct?
Correct.
25 people on, that's a Okay.
What's the standard for vehicle preventability and non-preventability?
Did you hear that, Mark?
No, I didn't.
What's the standard for preventable or
Preventable
preventable
and
vehicle
non-preventable.
for
Yeah.
vehicles? Preventable and non-preventable.
That's not the kind of finding.
Well, I mean, it's if there
But
is
do you
a
guys
way
find
that
that?
the-
Is that committee responsible for finding if that's the case?
I thought
In
they,
your opinion, then it goes back to the management of that
Right.
department as far as what's done
Okay.
from that. We just make a determination and management handles it from there.
about the cause, the contributing factors, and you recommend corrective action, right?
Yes.
No, that's not my question though.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that's what this board does, and then it goes back to management, to the department level to determine preventability.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah, I'm confused now too.
A little confused, but we'll.
Is this,
We'll wait till.
Wait.
So Mark, do you also, with the IRB's findings, do you also make a recommendation as to preventability of an accident? Or do you strictly determine the primary cause, contributing factors, and recommended corrective action?
Correct, we recommend, and then management decides what happens to the individual from there.
You
We have
recommend,
no,
But he didn't
Whether
answer,
it's
it's not an
preventable?
appeal board then?
he didn't answer your question.
What
I
all
do.
do you guys recommend?
yeah, we recommend if it's preventable and, based on the person's history, on, you know, how they've driven, if they had multiple citation tickets, and we basically give our opinion, present the evidence based on our professional opinion to management, and from there, management decides what happens.
Right, so going back to my question, what standards do they use for preventability, for preventability and non-preventability on vehicles?
Do you guys have a set of standards that you go by as far as determining if it's preventable or non-preventable dealing with vehicles?
I'd have to go back and look at the information. It's been
Okay,
a while since we had any just code.
okay. We
So,
do that.
so my question is, it sounds like someone has an accident, it goes in front of this board for them to determine whether it's preventable or non-preventable, they make a recommendation to management issues whether it's preventable or to include discipline, is that correct?
Management makes a disciplinary decision.
Right.
Correct. And they only make a recommendation.
Yeah,
About-
anything they do is recommended.
Okay.
Yeah, anytime there's a
What's
vehicle
the-
accident, risk is involved.
So what is the appeal process then?
Mark doesn't.
No.
What's the appeal process for the employee? Who do they go to for appealing the determination of a
Goes to
preventable
the
accident?
department, and the department would determine if there was any discipline, and if there was discipline, it would follow the grievance process.
Okay,
He's
take
talking about
the
appeal-
discipline
he's
out,
talking about appeal to
preventability.
preventable person, not-
Right. Who do they appeal to?
I don't know, Mike.
I don't think there is any appeal process for the IRB's findings. Mark, I know there's a manual for the IRB, or at least it's is it in the BCC policies? I remember I've seen it before, that
I
explains
believe
the
it, yeah, I
IRB.
believe it is, and I think it's in safety manual too, if I'm not
Oh, okay,
mistaken.
that's where I've seen it, it's in the safety manual. So,
Yes.
I can't recall, is there any sort of appeal process for the IRB's findings?
We just make a determination based on, safety professionals, and having done this before, and we present to management. From there, management handles it.
Okay,
So
And
no-
again, an incident's gonna be something over $1,000, and typically a major event that happens. It's not every accident or everything that happens.
So the next question I would have is, anybody trained on vehicle preventability and non-preventability? What the standards are all 25 of them trained on it?
I wouldn't say all 25, but our risk department obviously is.
Well, and the reason why I'm asking is, if all 25 are making the recommendation, and they're not trained, that would be an alarm for us, because we're talking about vehicles and buses. And if they had any input on what the factual part of it is, they should be trained on it. So I'm not making it an issue today, it's just for us in here, but that would be a concern that everybody is trained on.
Yeah, sir.
So, thank you for
Yep.
calling.
All right, thanks, Mark, appreciate you.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
So my concern is not how you determine, the discipline or the preventability, right? I mean, I will, obviously, I might have to get involved with that, but, I'm just gonna give you a straight example. We recently had an employee who was charged with a preventable accident. He wasn't charged at the accident. The other car was charged with the moving violation. But our safety director or whoever determined it at our location and gave him a preventable accident. He wants to, in our current existing labor contract, we have an appeal process for that because, he's sitting there saying, well, how did I end up with a preventable accident? I didn't get charged. The city police officer issued the ticket to the other lady who hit me, right? So how does he appeal to get that preventable accident off his record? Or potentially get it off his record?
We don't have a current appeal process for that I'm aware of.
If they're disciplined though, it would go through the grievance process.
He was not disciplined.
Well, that would be the avenue of appeal, so that employee then was not penalized in any way.
He was given a preventable accident.
So-
On his record.
So you're saying preventable you build up preventable accidents.
You could be
police
terminated.
disciplinary.
According to the SSPP. There would be terminated.
Preventable accidents, it's disciplinary, preventable accidents are disciplinary, because the amount of preventable accidents, 3 preventable accidents in a 12-month period, termination, 4 preventable accidents in a 12-month period, termination. So that's a part of the discipline, the rest of discipline.
So then it wouldn't go to appeal until it becomes disciplinary action. Or else it's like arguing, well, I didn't want to get this verbal reprimand because I don't agree that I was in the wrong. So I would say the appeal process would only start if there's disciplinary action involved.
So are you saying that he couldn't take an action until later if he got disciplined, and then he would appeal? He would go through the grievance process to argue that the discipline given to him is not justified, and then start going all the way back and start arguing the initial preventable
The
action.
first preventable action
Well, I
is
can
not
see that
actually
can go into
done.
arbitration all the time. See, in our existing labor agreement, we have an accident review board.
Which
And that's what,
I think Rod just said is not feasible because.
well, it could be feasible if the parties could find a neutral, maybe retired police officer or
But
something.
that's not what's in the agreement.
I
The
know,
agreement
I
says
know.
it. So it's not feasible the way it's currently written in the expired contract.
And I can say that I have taken opportunity to try to look for those outside elements. The cost for a consultant, it's a lot. And I guess we'll have to figure out a way, if we will continue that, we've got to figure out how that cost will be appropriated.
So currently under ECAT, when there's an accident that occurs, our safety director makes that decision right now. And the paperwork I've seen, it's him and maybe some supervisors make the determination of whether it's preventable. It doesn't go through the other process, what they're describing. But,
Right now currently, but I mean, it could go through that process where an accident falls under risk management. It could go through that process and allow them to be able to have the panel make the decision on whether or not it was preventable or non-preventable versus having one individual make that determination. Yes, sir.
yeah, I'm a little confused because
Versus investigation.
there should have, I actually attended an incident review board appeal process, and I'm a little confused why it's being said now there isn't one. That kind of surprised me. I actually attended one, listened to the arguments being made, and then they voted. And they voted against that employee that day. Okay. So that means we would have to give up, if we agree to this language, we would be giving up our current appeal process that we actually have.
It says though that the safety manager shall review and investigate all accidents/incidents involving a county/ECAT vehicle and make a recommendation to the Mass Transit Director as to whether the accident was preventable or non-preventable and the degree, if any, the employee should contribute to the accident. So why is the safety manager doing a investigation and giving a recommendation to the Mass Transit Director? What's the role of the Incident Review Board?
So, risk management, anytime there's an accident, we've got 2 risk analysts that go out and do an investigation. So they're a resource for the safety officer at the department, and there's an investigation that's collaboratively done. And then that's when,
Separate from the incident review board.
if it's $1,000 or more, then that's when the incident review board comes in.
And their function is to try and determine what caused the accident and then make recommendations to help prevent another accident.
No, I get.
That's what they do.
Yeah, and I get it, but the way it's worded here is the safety manager that works for ECAT is doing
At
an
the department
investigation at the department level
Mhm.
And
and
then
making a
counties.
recommendation on preventability to the Mass Transit Director.
Right.
Then there's the Incident Review Board that's doing basically the same exact thing. Right?
Part
If
of
it's
the reason there
$1,000.
is an IRB is because of our insurance.
I get it, but suppose they come up with 2 different scenarios. The IRB or the,
Then it would be
IRB
up to
board.
the director.
So,
Just seems like, a lot going on right
So
there.
this is the composition that's in the policy of the board membership. You've got board president's the risk manager, chairpersons include risk management, and then there's a non-voting member of risk management.
Which part, the safety manager shall review?
Yes, and what?
There's a road prison officer.
Yeah, they made some
somebody from
recommendation
roads,
to the
vehicle
Mass
maintenance,
Transit
senior
Director as
equipment
to whether
operator,
the accident was
roads, solid
preventable or
waste,
not.
building maintenance and facilities, emergency vehicle
That's why
operations for
we're
public
doing
safety,
ECAT.
risk analyst for
Together.
risk management, and then they have different third-party members that rotate in and
I
out.
think I understand what you're saying, it's just that,
Sounds like he's getting a recommendation from 2. He's getting
Could be.
from the safety manager, and then he's getting one from the IRB.
yeah, and then the new infrastructure bill says this has to be jointly agreed to. So the county's policy of the accident review board is not what, may not be what comes out of the joint safety committee. And that joint safety committee, in my mind, is gonna overrule this incident review board. So I'm just trying to put it all together. It's new to me. The county's process is new to me, and I'm trying to get in my head, how's it all gonna come together?
And
I'm
one's
with
coming
you.
from the federal level, right?
I'm with you, Curtis. When.
I'm not trying to be funny, I'm just trying to
I know,
understand.
no, I'm certain, I understand, trust me. In my experience, I've gotten, and I'm gonna go back, because used to, the Incident Review Board did make a recommendation on disciplinary action,
Thought they did.
way back in the day.
Okay.
And then they morphed, and they changed to where they just kind of give their findings, if you will, or their recommendation
Of the facts.
of their interpretation of what they look at the accident report, if it's a law enforcement involved, they look at that. They look at the risk management report, because risk goes out to everything. They do their own reports.
Right.
And so they're looking at that information to make the determination. And then they would send it to me, for instance, out at a roads. I'll be honest with you, I don't always agree with it.
Right, that's what I'm doing.
Because you were an equipment operator.
Because I've been there and done it. I know some of the mitigating factors sometimes. And sometimes I did. And it didn't always, sometimes it was disciplinary action, a write-up or something of that nature. sometimes I looked at it and went, just advise an employee, with these things and kind of give them a little counseling. So it's kind of left up to me, and it still is, I guess, left up to the director. I wasn't real thrilled with, just being upfront and honest, I wasn't real thrilled when they morphed, really didn't give us, what do you want me to do?
Right,
So I gotta figure it out, what I need you for.
right.
And that's kind of how I felt about it.
Right, because your management team, like it says here, could have did the investigation, gave you the recommendations.
Yeah, I do believe it's important that Rich goes out and does an investigation on scene at the incident. I believe that's important, takes pictures, does an investigation. The way I always addressed it was my decision to determine. Yeah, you could have done better here, this absolutely preventable. Check your mirrors, don't back into the mailbox, don't back into the whatever,
Right, right.
Sometimes it just felt like it was. And then I've had, when I was in engineering, I had crazy incidents. I had an employee whose vehicle was parked out back in the county parking lot, and limb falls out of the tree, lands on top of it. They wanted me to send him for a drug test. I said, he's in his office. He wasn't even in the vehicle.
Right, right.
Well, you gotta send him for a drug test. It's not, I ain't doing that.
Right,
You
right,
know? I mean.
It wasn't even driving. Right?
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from, absolutely. And it might be something we might need to just work on a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I'm just.
Provide better clarification.
And I'm just looking, not the discipline side, I understand that part, that's the grievance process. I'm looking at the preventability, and then you charge someone for a preventable accident, and there was no discipline, and that employee says, wait, I shouldn't have got a preventable here, I need some kind of appeal process to that. Where they can challenge it, and that's what I'm wondering.
I guess in the way I operated, I would consider myself the appeal process. The director is the appeal process.
So could the appeal process be back to the director, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of how I operated. I mean, once the ARB said, well, here's our findings, so to speak. If you're gonna leave it to me, then, okay, leave it to me. Then I'm the appeal process. But in most instances, you're gonna have quite a bit of information. You're gonna have the risk management report.
Oh, yeah.
If law enforcement, if PPD or FHP is involved, you're gonna have that report. And those reports, to me, carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, and I'm just using the example, Wes, of the one that I'm dealing with right now, where the operator did not get a moving violation. It was the other car that got the ticket, right? And the safety director at ECAP charged him with a preventable accident. And I'm assuming Ms. Ellis, who was the director, accepted that. That's why he got it now that I'm hearing this process. But he's showing it to me. I've got all the evidence. I've got the video, and I actually agree with him. We should be challenging this action.
I think it's kind of like an insurance company. I had a lady pull out a Whataburger in Gregory, just came right on out and hit the side of my truck. So we start going through the insurance process. I wasn't charged. The police report said I was in no way was I at fault. And the other folks' insurance says, yeah, but you could have prevented. I said, how can I prevent somebody who doesn't stop and look before they pull out of the driveway and hit the back quarter panel of my truck? Well, you should have been paying better attention. I mean, that's what they said. I mean, we were riding around with it. She goes, well, the police report doesn't say that it wasn't your fault. I said, yes, it does. I'm looking at it right here.
Right.
And so we had to go through a whole long process,
Right.
I guess anything could be, well, not anything, but I mean, sure, I guess if I've been driving looking that way and seeing them coming, I guess I could have taken an action, but, I'd already, it was kind of, the front part of the truck had already kind of passed the driveway, so you couldn't even catch him out of your peripheral. And, yeah, there's a lot of things that can be preventable, but is it reasonably preventable? I
Can I ask for us to take a quick caucus on this, so for the sake of time, trying to get through this? I think I need to have a conversation with our team
Okay.
on it, just real quick and get their thoughts on it and be able to
Sure thing.
get back to you something or accept it, so. Yeah. Just tell me what you want.
I did, I sent that to
Is that,
The copies of the
oh,
TAs.
yeah, that's good.
I made copies of the incident review board policy.
Thank you.
Just step by step.
Okay, thank
The safety manual,
Can you
that's
pause
all
that?
on
We're
power
gonna go
EMS as well.
caucus. Can you pause that? Okay, we just want to make a quick verbal. We don't have much to ask on that. I think we've already asked for that one sentence to be removed under section 4. The last sentence in that paragraph at the bottom. The employee will be responsible for providing union information disciplinary. We've already asked that. We would still like to keep the current practice of $5,000 for the transit piece of it, for that incident review board. We don't know if that can or can't happen, but that's an ask. We also would like all committee members to be trained prior to making a decision on preventability. So we're just asking for people to be trained on the committee on vehicles, preventability, whatever that standard is. And the last piece is that we add the section that Mr. Kimbrough was talking about, that the federal law has just passed in the infrastructure bill about the committee, and we would just put that language in here that we would be adopting and moving forward with that committee as mandated.
Okay.
By law. That's our ask under this, and everything else we could agree to.
I got you.
Mark is going to email Crystal back, and he will be ready to get on at any time. So, we appreciate the time.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry,
There's one
and,
other ask.
yeah, I'm sorry, say it, Jim, I forgot.
Yeah, about the mirrors and the.
Yeah, we wanted to ask that the language be put back in there about, if an operator's, and I don't know how to word it.
Well, it's already there.
It's already there.
What is it?
Let me find it.
Down at the
And
bottom.
basically what it is if the operators-
It's under section 5, second paragraph.
If the operator's driving down the road and there's an obstruction in the, road, that they're not accountable for the obstructions in the road. A tree limb is what I'm referring to.
Mirrors and clearance lights.
I'm not talking about
Yes, minor
barricades.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I ain't talking about barricades that
I'm
you go
not
through.
talking about a barricade or anything like that.
Gotcha. So,
Yeah, because
like
they
you
can
said,
have
the
some
mirrors
quick.
are sticking out.
Yeah.
And the
Or
tree
the
limb,
clearance light, and you got branches hanging it down, and
Yeah.
you're trying to judge, is that gonna hit me, you know, and you can't tell.
it's mostly stuff like tree limbs and things that somebody's not taking care of, pruning and things like that. For preventability, there's no way to get around that part.
They get stuck under an awning and overpass.
Yeah, well.
Right.
We're trying to go under the
Just saying.
17th bridge.
Decide to take,
Not.
take 17th Avenue.
If you want the sunroof on the bus, we're not
Yeah.
talking about cutting this stuff.
Is Mark logged in yet?
It should
And-
pop up the whole.
And he sent you an email, Crystal, that
He
to.
was-
I'm looking at
was-
my email, I ain't
He
got it.
was
Yeah, got
sending
it.
it.
Oh, he was sending it, okay. And you wanna tell him, just mention the whole, the annual thing? You wanna just throw that out there?
What I movie?
About Chrome. Vacation.
Oh, I did? I thought we talked about that already. Didn't we?
I don't think you even put it across the table yet.
Yeah, I thought him as soon as we came back already.
Did he? Am I having a senior moment? Did he throw across the counter back from for the annual leave?
You talked about,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, chart
yeah,
B
for
and,
those that get 3 more weeks,
yeah.
transition into, like it's a year transition.
For the life of the contract.
Except, no, not the life of, I said life of the contract, but in the third year, they would
Start.
phase into
Right,
what
they're
everybody.
phased in the third year, right, okay.
Did that
Yeah,
soon?
he can do that.
I must have been sorry, distracted with Mark on
He
the
was
phone.
trying to get some more good paper.
I just want to know, what's in it, is it Jenny Coke?
Were we good
I'll call you back.
on Article 24 attendance?
Okay, I'll call you back.
With the changes that we made?
Which one is it? Just tell me.
That's the one with the, late reports and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
since you
2
said
years,
that
we-
about
we
the
agreed
time
to the
clock.
2
Right.
years.
Thing, yeah, we were
Okay,
good with
so
that.
we're good to TA this then?
Yes.
And then I got a copy of Article 28 TA.
Okay, thank you.
You need to forward it in.
Yeah.
I'll get more copies. Mark Floyd, right?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
just got an email from him.
Yep, that's him.
Wonderful.
Hey, Mark?
So we don't have Madam.
How's everybody doing?
Good. Hold on one second, Mark, we're TAing an article.
I'll wait for that all day.
And we need to wait for Mike.
That's why he's up here, because he always steals
And they got Mike Manamore coming too, Mark. And she's got to print off your email.
Yeah, sure.
Crystal, when you get a chance, why don't you do something?
Crystal, will
If you ever get any
can
time.
you print off enough for them? Can you
Never.
print off enough for us too, please?
Sure.
But you can share your screen, and meanwhile, can't you, Mark?
Sure, I can.
Yeah.
If y'all can see it.
Well, let's do that then.
He can share the screen and start talking before the copies come in.
Can I make it front and back?
No,
Y'all hold your paper.
I'm gonna have to bring a ring back next time.
Wait a minute, maintenance department's got it
Okay.
covered.
I'm gonna talk.
Back and front.
Kimber, if you ever be looking to know where your paper towels went, you know.
That wipes his thing.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, been there for 36 years, and that's what I want to roll up paper towels.
That's all, 36 years?
Just 36 years, brother.
How much more you got, about 40?
I got about another 20 more.
Willie
You
Carter.
started, I mean, Slippy, you started so young.
I've got about, all right, let's see, I'm at 60 now, so I ain't got much more to go.
Willie Carter had 12 years on you when you came. He's at 48 now.
Wow.
If you'd have told me when I started at ECAT that I'd still be there after 36 years, I'd have laughed. And laughed and laughed. Yeah.
I understand.
Well, what about now?
I'm still laughing. I'll tell you what, I can't complain. Put a lot of beans on the table for me.
There you go.
That's the way to look
Got
at
my
it.
kids through school and all that
That's
stuff,
the way to
so
look at it,
I can't complain.
I told somebody the other day, I took a job and found a career.
right?
It's been good.
I mean, like I told my sons, if you take a job, you gotta stay with it, get it anywhere.
Yeah, I don't understand how they jump around every 2 years and go here, go there, go there. Then they look back. My mother's a nurse and she did something similar. Go to a lot of different hospitals, go to different, jump around and stuff. The money was good while I was there, but then on the back end,
Right.
she didn't have much because she didn't stay stable long enough to put into something.
Yep.
I thought we were gonna let him start.
I'm waiting on you. I thought we was waiting on Mike Mallon.
Oh, we're waiting on Mike?
I emailed him. But we can go ahead.
All right, Mark, it's all yours. If you share your screen and walk through it, she's still printing though.
All right, there's mine.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
You gotta sit back, I think I look better if I sit.
Yeah, you're like us, don't get up close to the camera.
Both have the camera above you looking down a little bit. I got it.
Those palm trees look like horns that are behind you in the picture, Mike.
Yeah, see, I'm standing in front of a tree.
All right, Mark, it's all yours.
Okay. You want me to share my screen and walk through it?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, so, here we have the, what I guess is the union's counter proposal to what I understand to be the county's proposal from earlier today. Just so everybody's clear on how I formatted this thing, because I didn't have a whole lot of time, I took the county's proposal and I removed it from legislative format and put it in final form. So all of the language that was underlined in the county's proposal has been included, language that was stricken through has been removed, and then I put the union's proposal in legislative format based on that. So this would be legislative format off of the county's proposal from earlier today. So walking through Article 5, it's a substantial change to the current grievance and arbitration procedure, but the union's willing to work with that. But there are some modifications that we think need to be made, starting with Section 2 election and process. The county's proposal in Section 2A is actually a violation of the law, so we're not going to agree to that. What the county has proposed here in Section 2A indicates that an employee must designate a representative at the time of filing Step 1, which an employee is not required to do under the law. The employee can retain a representative at any time, they can designate the union as their representative at any time, or they can choose to proceed on their own throughout the entire process. So the county's language regarding designation of benefit of a representative at Step 1, we're not going to agree to because it's a violation of the law. Separately, with regard to the decision mutually agreed to by BCC and the employee's designated representative shall be binding on the employee when an election of representative has been made. We agree to that, we don't have any problem with that concept, but we think that that language is unnecessary. If you have a representative, you have a designated representative. If Kristen and I, or Mike and I are to strike a deal, that's gonna be binding on Local 1395 from my end and the county from their end. The union being given notice and opportunity to be present, again, is a statutory right. We don't want to interfere with that statutory right at all. If the union is the representative, obviously they'll be involved. If the union is not the representative, then the county is required by statute to give the union notice and opportunity to be present at any grievance meeting. So we're not going to waive that right. I have included a sentence at the end here that is taken from lower in the proposal, from the county's proposal, making clear that an employee or the union may invoke arbitration as set forth in this article, or the Merit System Protection Board, the MSPB, or its successor, but not both. I changed invoke the grievance procedure to arbitration because later in the language, when it's referring to, when it comes to Step 3, it makes clear that an employee can process a grievance through Step 1 and Step 2, and they don't have to choose arbitration or the Merit System Protection Board until after Step 2. So in order for that to be consistent, this language should not say that you can invoke the grievance procedure or MSPB. It should instead say what I've proposed here, that the union, employer union may invoke arbitration or MSPB, but not both. I've modified Section 2B to make clear that if the union refuses to represent an employee because they are not a member, then the employee has the ability to follow the grievance and arbitration procedure established in the collective bargaining agreement in the same manner as the union would. That's the basic statutory right, and we don't want to specify anything other than that. With regard to Section 3 in procedure, you'll see it throughout this article. I've modified where, like here, where it refers to an employee grievance, or later it says an employee may file. I just changed it to grievances generically or a grievant generically because it's not always an employee that files a grievance. The union has the ability to grieve. So making this more generic would encompass not just an employee filing a grievance, but all grievances, which would include the union or the employee. Indeed, the county seems to be proposing that if a grievance is resolved prior to its submission in arbitration, it shall not establish any precedent. If the parties reach a settlement agreement, the parties can include such a provision in a settlement agreement, But if the union files a grievance and the county says, oh, you're right, we think we should be able to point back to that grievance. That's why I've taken out D. I should have re-lettered, I just noticed, if I take out D, E should become D, so that would all have to be re-lettered. Going into the actual grievance procedure, it seemed that the county wants to make this oral discussion at the discretion of the employee, a may rather than a shall. If it's a may rather than a shall, I don't think that 5-day time period should be there. The bottom line is an employee has, under this proposal, 7 days to file a grievance. If they talk to the supervisor on day 1 or day 6, I don't think it matters. It's an oral discussion. If they're not able to resolve the oral discussion, a grievance still has to be filed within 7 days of the event giving rise to the grievance. So I don't think it should matter when that oral discussion takes place. I believe that Mike Lowry communicated to you already his thoughts on the timelines, reducing that 10-day period to 7 and reducing the 15-day period for management to 10. I have normalized those timelines throughout the article. So anytime the union has to act, it's 7 days. Anytime the employer has to act, it's 10 days. So you'll see that here in 1B, 1C, and you see that continue in step 1 under 2A. In 2A, you'll again see the more generic language about a grievance being filed, not specifically the employee filing the grievance. You'll also see that I attempted to clarify the language that it must be filed within 7 days of the date the grievant knew or should have known about the occurrence of the event giving rise to the grievance. The county's proposal said that the grievance had to be filed in writing and that it had to set forth specifically the complete facts. The complete facts may or may not be known at the time that a grievance has to be filed, particularly because the grievance must be filed within 7 days. I've modified that language so that people aren't boxed in by whatever they write on the grievance, but clarified it because I understand the employer's concern. Hey, you can't just file these generic grievances, you need to know what's going on. So I've included language that the grievance has to be filed by submitting it to the Mass Transit Director, and it must set forth the facts on which the grievance is based with sufficient specificity so as to allow the employer to know the event giving rise to the grievance. It shouldn't be a guessing. The specific provision or provision of the agreement at issue is fine, the relief requested is fine. I took out the last line because, as I stated previously, the grievant is not required at the onset of a grievance to have a representative in place. They may decide later that they need a representative and they have the ability to do that. In 2B, again, just going generic, instead of the employee, it's the grievant because the union might be the grievant. And as I mentioned, the timelines for management have been reduced from 15 to 10 days. Again, it's anytime the union acts, it's 7. Anytime management acts, it's 10. So you see that in 2B, 2C. That carries through to 3A, which is step 2. Again, here you have the more generic language. Instead of the employee or representative, it's just the grievance may be submitted in writing to the county administrator in 7 days. Again, because it's the union's time to act. I just clarified that it's not necessarily after receipt of the decision at step 1. It would be this receipt of the decision or expiration of the time period to issue such decision, because if no decision is issued at step 1, the union can proceed, or the employee can proceed. Again, just going generic, employee to grievant, his or her to the grievance, representative, if any. Because the language says the county administrator or designee will have a meeting with the grievant, the last portion of that last sentence is not necessary. There's nothing that's at the county administrator or designee's discretion in that sentence, so I took it out so as to not cause confusion. In 3B, we again go generic. Instead of employee, it's grievant, and the grievance representative, if any. Again, 10 days for management to act. In 3C, again, 10 days for management to act, 7 days for the union to act. 3D again goes generic. Instead of employee, it's the grievant because it might be the union. Going into section 4, which is arbitration, again go generic, which is grievant instead of employee, and again 7 days to act. Anytime the union acts, it's 7 days. The language, the rest of the language there is good. I will note that these bond provisions always make me nervous because I don't have any problem with it. I totally understand the concept. And in fact, I've had arbitrators say that where there's a pro se plaintiff, if you will, pro se grievant, they won't proceed unless money's put up front. I never blame them for that. But I do always get nervous about these provisions because the employee has a statutory right to proceed. That said, I'm not opposed to the language. But you will see in 4B that the county proposed that an arbitrator be selected within 10 days of receiving a list from the FMCS. Two things here. One, we're days in all the remainder of the article, and then all of a sudden here we switch to business days. I think it should just be consistent throughout. So I took out the word business, 10 days. But if you look at 4A, in that bond language, it says that the bond will be placed in escrow within a period of 30 days of the employee's request for arbitration and prior to selection of an arbitrator. But then here, this language specifies that an arbitrator would be selected within 10 days. So we have a conflict, an internal conflict in the language. In order to resolve that conflict, I just added this language here. The arbitrator be selected within 10 days or within 10 days of the employee posting bond, because in theory, they could have longer to do that under 4A. I changed this 2 to 7 because presumably this is going to be the employee or the union. They're the ones that are going, in 99 cases out of 100, they're the ones that are going to be referring the grievance to arbitration. They're the ones that are going to be required to submit it to the FMCS. So again, because it's a duty of the union to act, I should made it 7 days so that it's 7 throughout. Here, I just specified that in-person hearings would be held in Escambia County. I'm not going to profess to be an expert on the geographic area surrounding Pensacola, but I know that here in Palm Beach County, if you were to say that hearings had to be held in West Palm Beach, that's a pretty finite geographic area, and what we call West Palm Beach is not actually West Palm Beach. So, but I understand the concept. Venue should lay in Escambia County. I just thought that that might be a little better. Down in D, just change his to a more generic, the arbitrator's jurisdiction. It shall be final and binding on the BCC, the union, the grievance, and the employees in the bargaining unit. It's final and binding. And there is a provision later that states that it's final and binding on the parties. But if an employee proceeds on their own with regard to a discipline case, while that certainly may have some precedential value, if the union's not a party to it, for example, then it's, the binding nature of that is debatable. When considering a grievance, I put unless the parties agree otherwise, because the parties could always agree to extend these time frames. Didn't have any problem with 1 and 2. In 3, the arbitrator will have no authority to determine any issue. I just put other than as presented by the parties. So the parties may have different ideas of the issue, where the arbitrator will say, okay, I hear the union's framing of the issue, I hear the county's framing of the issue, and I'll determine the framing of the issue. But the issues are those presented by the parties, and only those issues presented by the parties should be resolved by the arbitrator. I agree with that concept. I didn't like the word essential. So refrain from issuing a statement of opinion or conclusion not essential to the determination. I don't know what essential means, neither will the arbitrator, neither does anybody else here today. So I just put, if it's not related to this matter, you can't speak to it. In 4, the arbitration will limit the decision, strictly application, interpretation of it's the collective bargaining agreement. I mean, we define grievance above. There are disputes involving an interpretation or application of collective bargaining agreement. We don't want to be arbitrating application of various laws. It's either a violation of collective bargaining agreement or it's not. So I think that should just be CBA. Under number 5, the arbitrator will without power of authority to. I think that this just should be, they're without the power of authority to, add to, subtract from, or in any way, modify in any way the terms of the agreement. Applicable laws, rules, or regulations having the force or effect of law shouldn't be before the arbitrator. Again, the only issue, just like stated here, the only issue should be the collective bargaining agreement. Is there a violation of collective bargaining agreement or not? If the county is going to claim, in some hypothetical situation that the collective bargaining agreement or compliance with the collective bargaining agreement would violate the law, then we would turn to the savings clause, and that's a determination that's gonna have to be made by a court or some other authority. That's not gonna be an issue that's before the arbitrator. And the same thing is true for 5B. These aren't issues that are before the arbitrator. The arbitrator's there strictly to determine whether or not the county is compliant with the CBA. If the CBA or the provisions of the CBA somehow violate the law, that's an entirely different matter, not a grievance. In 6, in 6, you're sort of limiting what back pay an arbitrator can award. Okay, I'm on board with that. It can include, as proposed by the county, wages, benefits, seniority, and other conditions of employment. I changed that to other current conditions of employment and other actual damages, because, there have been cases where, for example, an employer improperly ordered an employee into work and the employee had to, say, cancel a flight, and so they had to eat the cost of the ticket. Well, that's a damage suffered by the employee, and the employee ought to be able to recoup that damage. Under 6A, no award for back pay shall exceed the amount of any pay I added in benefits the member would have otherwise earned at his regular rate of pay is not the appropriate measure of damages. Employees could be entitled to lost overtime, they could be entitled to health insurance, premiums or deductibles or out-of-pocket expenses. The idea is to make the employee whole, but I agree that the idea is not necessarily to enrich the employee, put them in a better position than they would have been. So I modified the language here to say that they would not, no pay and benefits the member would otherwise earn or receive had there not been a violation of the collective bargaining agreement. I didn't, as far as this time frame, I agree it shouldn't be retroactive to a date earlier than the date of the occurrence giving rise to the grievance, but I didn't understand this last provision here. In no event more than the time limits permitted for initiation of the grievance. In theory, the union has 7 days to initiate a grievance. That might be construed to limit back pay to 7 days. So I don't, we won't go retroactive back past the date of the occurrence, but we can't agree to that language there. In B, the award will not exceed the actual loss to, I put, or damages suffered by, for the reasons that I've already explained, the grievant, and in a case involving discharge, will be reduced by the amount of unemployment compensation. Outside of the case involving discharge, I don't know where you be entitled to any unemployment. 7, 8, 9 are fine. In 10, these bifurcated hearings do nothing but add additional time and expense to arbitral proceedings. If either party has a dispute regarding arbitrability, we think the arbitrator that's selected should hear that issue. We agree the issue should be bifurcated. So if one and 2, and you only proceed to 2 if the grievance is determined to be arbitrable. So that's what the language says here, that the issues will be bifurcated and the arbitrator shall only rule on the substantive issues if the grievance is determined to be arbitrable. Section 4, with regard to the time limits, I just changed in C. You had that extensions of time must be by mutual agreement in writing and signed by both parties. In 2021, the parties aren't likely to sign that. They're probably going to do it by email. So I just changed it must be a mutual agreement of the parties. In section 5, exceptions, I don't think section 5 needs to exist at all. This language that's here in green is what I moved up in the article. And this language here, I'm not real sure what the county is driving at with regard to this language. Nothing in this article or elsewhere in this agreement shall be construed to permit the union or employee to file agreements on behalf of any employee without his or her consent. If the union believes there's a violation of collective bargaining agreement, we're going to file a grievance. We don't care what the employee thinks. Sometimes the contract's been violated to the benefit of an employee, and they may say, no, don't file a grievance, but we're going to do it because while one employee may have benefited, another one might have been disadvantaged. So the union doesn't need the consent of an employee in order to file a grievance. And if employee A files a grievance on behalf of employee B, I'm sure that the county would deny it because employee A doesn't have standing. 2, with respect to any matter which is subject to grievance, appeal, administrative action before another government board, agency, or court proceeding. I think what you're trying to do is say that, this grievance arbitration procedure is the exclusive remedy for all violations of the contract. If that's what you're trying to say, we agree with that concept. However, a termination, for example, might be, subject of litigation under a Title VII claim, but also subject to a grievance procedure under a violation of collective bargaining agreement. And, those are two different claims that have nothing to do with each other, and both of those claims would be allowed to survive. And I'm not going to agree to language that would waive anybody's rights in that regard. With regard to Article 7, if you want me just to continue on through on union leave, in Article 7, Section A, this sentence that is the second sentence of Section A, the way it's written, it would seem to say that a union official could not do union work when on vacation, for example. Employees are free to do whatever the hell they want when they're on vacation, and if they want to spend their vacation doing union work, they're free to do that too. So I just specified that union officials will not be permitted to take union leave with pay for regularly assigned work duties to conduct union business, except as specifically provided herein. And that is the whole point of this article. With regard to what constitutes direct reputational activities, we've got a citation in here to Delpino Allen. Delpino Allen doesn't do much good in actually defining that, but that's fine. Direct representational activities that are identified here are certainly not exhaustive. For example, I put investigations in here. Those no doubt are direct representational activities. So I made this an exemplary list as opposed to a finite list. Under D, I propose to delete this sentence unless immediate representation is required. The request for leave must be submitted no less than 3 business days. The bottom line is the request for leave has to be approved by the transit director, and I put for designee down below. If the transit director chooses to approve it, 1 business day in advance, it doesn't matter. The transit director has to approve it. Propose to delete this sentence here. We don't think that union officials should be penalized for utilizing paid union leave, and this would penalize them for utilizing paid union leave because they would lose those hours worked towards overtime. As I mentioned before, I deleted the word sole discretion so that I could add in or designate, because transit director may be off for 2 weeks, and the designee would be the one to approve or deny the request. And then as you might have noticed, we left this 120 hours here that the county has proposed, but in order to accommodate that, we need negotiations not to chew up that entire time thing. So, therefore, we propose this F. F specifies that attendance at negotiations for the principal officers of Local 1395, the president, vice president, and secretary treasurer, would not be counted towards union leave with pay. So contract negotiations between Local 1395 and the county effectively would be allowed time off if they're on there. So that's the union's proposed counter proposal with regard to Articles 5 and 7. I will stop sharing my screen, and if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to.
I do not have any questions. I think what we need to do is take this back to a caucus, Mark, and we probably will, because we know your time, why don't we go into a caucus at, I can't see my feet, but if they'll hold on with me on this, let's take a very brief caucus and have an immediate reaction, and then we can, if we need to drill down into the specific language of these articles, go back to caucus for that purpose. Does that make sense, team?
Yes,
Sure.
sir.
All right. So let's go to caucus, and Chris, if you would contact me.
Yes. I will.
When you get into caucus, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep, no problem.
Do you want me to leave this up so you can?
No, he
No,
just,
we-
he-
we-
Mark, you're gonna go ahead and go off and
We'll call him.
we'll call you, Mark.
No, just leave it up.
Oh, can we leave it up? Okay, you gotta hit your button though.
Just leave it, leave it up.
I was gonna say, I don't want it to be recorded.
We should just go until we get the
Alright,
contract done together.
Well, we got an idea.
Well, let's wait for Mark.
In other words, we think we've been doing good.
I think we've been doing all right. Doing all right.
We finally see a road and a path to success. I just start this thing back. Okay.
Mike Manimal coming back or no?
I don't think so.
So we chewed on it a little bit, on 5 and 7 and 5. We want to chew on a little bit more. But what we'd like to do is propose another bargaining session prior.
That's the thing we asked before we do that.
Okay, good.
Pending a resolution of the grievance article, we're gonna withdraw our proposal on Article 4 and reserve the right to vacate that article.
And you reserve
You
the
hear that,
right-
Mark?
I didn't hear the last part.
Reserve the right to vacate the article until we come to a resolution on grievance.
Okay.
But we would like to propose to schedule another session prior to the impasse hearing. We've got some work we want to do on our side and bring back. I think we were looking at the 29th or the 30th, or the 1st or the 2nd.
Scared County don't want me to have no vacation this year.
Man, I thought you could stay on
So
vacation.
Mark, Mark, wasn't there something on the second that? Can you hear us, Mark?
It's on you though.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Did you hear everything they said?
You said the 30th?
Yeah.
Let me write those dates down, because I don't have my calendar.
Want me to be available, Mike?
29th
29th,
or 30th,
30th,
1st
1st.
or 2nd.
I know I have negotiations on the 2nd, but the 1st, 29th, and the 30th, I probably can be flexible enough to change my plans. No, this phone is good. So those 3 days would be good for me. I'm almost certain the 2nd is no good for me.
Twenty
29th, and
29th
30th.
29th is good for me.
Yeah, that's a Monday, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I can make the 29th work. That's the day we go after Thanksgiving. Can we do both days?
I've got some pretty significant meetings on the 30th.
So,
But I'm willing to start earlier.
My problem is flying in. I think the earliest I can get here is like 10 o'clock.
I got you.
So
Like I did
can we
this
not
time.
put an end time to that day and just,
That's fine.
and work?
That's fine.
And work?
When we come in on 29th, we'll have our stuff ready to present.
But if we could stay, until we get it done, or as much as we think we can
I'll
get
stay as
done.
late as y'all want.
All right, so then we'll take 29th, Mark. Will you be available on the 29th?
I can't, I've got negotiations at Fort Myers Beach starting at 10:30 Eastern, so, but I don't think that should hold you up. I mean, you can text me and call me, and I can call you during Fox's, whatever.
Right.
And then, how negotiations go, like those negotiations, are just starting, so, you know, that may be a 2-hour session, 3-hour session, I could join you after. The real problem is out of those days that you are considering, the only one that I could really do it would be on the 30th, but I am concerned, you know, the party's gotta be aware exhibits are due on the 2nd. So, yeah, we're gonna start running into procedural problems, if we push it out too far.
Okay, the 29th, I'll be here. I'll try to come in that Sunday and start as early as possible.
Sounds good to me.
So I'll actually come in on the 28th.
So you're coming, the 28th, is it, 29th's a Monday?
Yeah.
Is it, okay.
So Mark, we'll stick with the 29th. I'll come in on the Sunday and we'll call you as needed and you can reply.
Okay, Wes, I get up before
Whenever
9
you
a.m.
finish, you can just join us.
So start set.
7?
Yep, perfect.
All right, so.
Look at, Crystal, what's wrong?
I'm a 2-year-old kid.
We'll start 7:30.
None of them will be here at 7, I promise.
Give him a key to the house, tell him to lock
I'm
up.
telling you, he needs to pay rent.
No, he doesn't need to do any of that. He needs a companion. You need to get another one.
I got 4 boys, I ain't, no.
She got
Hey,
4
bro,
boys,
no.
she says.
I've got an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old at home. They grow up faster when there's 2 of them, trust me.
So Mark, we gotta
And
go.
it's that
We're
one,
good, Mark.
they just go snail pace.
So 7:30,
She's trying to push the time.
We'll do 7:30.
7:30, we'll start at 7:30, Mike.
7:30 is fine.
You know, in the morning.
7:30.
7:30. All right, the 28th.
right?
I gotta pray my daughter locks the house up when she goes to the school bus.
All right, it's good, and we just go till we get as much done as we can.
Absolutely.
All right.
What's wrong with you, bro? Come on now.
You're a transit guy, 7 o'clock.
Come on, we
Military guy,
have
you can do it.
conversations at 6 o'clock in the morning. Come on now, it's fine.
What a welcome back from vacation.
I was just getting ready to say, I mean, you know, we'll all be well rested.
All right.
All right, Mark, thank you, sir, we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
We're gonna-
Everybody take care, y'all have a great weekend.
All right.
Thank you, have a happy holiday, Mark.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Y'all
All
take
right.
care.
Bye-bye.
Be careful, I'm gonna try fried turkey for the first time in my life.
You know, it's gotta be thawed out first. Yeah.
I've seen
It's
them,
like
I've seen them do that.
What day should I start thawing?
Drop
Yes,
it
I do know.
And all of a sudden, it's just on.
And I would do it on concrete, Mike.
Yeah, I might do it in the middle of nowhere.
And not enclosed.
Do
And
it
a
in
fire
the backyard
extinguisher
by
right
the
next to you.
chicken.
And yeah, and don't mistake the turkey for the chickens you got in the yard.
Do it in the backyard by the chicken.
If they don't start laying some eggs, they're gonna be, where'd the chickens go? I have no idea.
Sure does taste like a funny turkey.
It's a funny turkey.
But thank you, guys, we
Appreciate
appreciate
y'all,
you.
appreciate it.
We're looking forward to it. So thank you.
We'll be ready.
All right.
All right.
I'm gonna take a second. I gotta put my stuff back in my
Yeah.
book neatly so I can keep up.
All right.
I'm gonna take a